I'm from Texas.
Texas, welcome. Very good.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
All right. And you say for Tema, correct? UK, yeah?
Yes.
Good. All right. Kevin, we know you're over there on the West Coast, so it's real early for you. Edna, say hello. Not sure if the audio is working. May not be. Cecile, where are you joining from today?
San Diego.
All right, welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Isaac. All right, he wants to share. Let's see if he can share. What else joining? All right. Did you want to give a try? Malik, do you want to try sharing your?
Yeah, yes, John.
Oh, there you
I
are.
want to try now and see if I.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. I think I need to have a co-host access. Okay, let me check. Okay,
And
great.
Haja, welcome, Haja. Where are you joining us from today?
Let me know if you can see what I'm sharing.
It's coming up.
Okay.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay,
Good.
great. All right.
Okay, welcome, Haja. Good. All right, there's Danielle.
Hi. Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I'm joining you from Silver Spring, Maryland.
All right,
Thank
well,
you.
welcome. Good to have you.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, Danielle, welcome. Got some feedback there. Hi, Danielle, welcome. Where are you joining us from today? You're on mute if you're there. Welcome, everybody. Adele. Good. All right. So I'm sure more people are going to be coming in as we go here, but Isaac, why don't we hand it over to you so you can start on the trading analysis.
Sure. Thank you. If you just give me the thumbs up once you can see my screen. Good. Hi, everyone. Another month, we're back, and it's good to see everyone. My name's Isaac Alabi. As you know, I cover the market analysis, do look at different coins, what Bitcoin's been doing over the last 4 or 5 weeks. And we try and not necessarily predict, but try and analyze and see where the price could possibly keep going. Look at key areas of interest for people who want to scale into Bitcoin and try and get it at the most affordable price. And also look at things to be mindful of with different market fundamentals that are taking place throughout. So as always, we go on to the trading app, the trading chart, which is Trading View, and this allows us to see the price of Bitcoin. What I might actually do is 1 second. Yeah, we'll start on the daily. So since the last time we was online, price was more or less at the same price as we are now. We're at 110K, between 110K, 111K, and last month we were roughly around about 112K. So we have set a new all-time high since the last time we was online, with price shooting up to just shy of 125K. if you, so I'm just going to make this up my screen. So if you have a look at my cursor here, so the H is when I'm hovering over any of these candles, the H will just show the high of that candle, and the L represents the low of that candle, and then the O is the opening price of that candle. So we set a new all-time high on the 14th of August. And that was just shy of 125k, so 124k and a half, which was aggressively rejected. That's a signal that people took a lot of profits, with it being at a key psychological level. We're still in the area of no man's land, because we're constantly setting new all-time highs over the last, since May. Price has just basically been in a price discovery range. And where we are now is an interesting level, because we had drawn this line in our previous live to look at what price could possibly do. And we wanted to see price do some retesting of key areas. And it's retested those exact key areas, those support and resistant lines. The support would be the base, the lower, and the resistance would be the top, the roof of any key zone that price is within. And what we wanted to do is see where we've made an aggressive move up or down. We want price to retest that zone to see if it is a new level of support. So we just go back, as we always do. We just say from early June, price made a new all-time high, going up to what was that, 117k, and then it continued to do a few more highs with not a lot of volume. This area that we broke out of, the 112k, was an area we wanted price to come back and test. So it came back and retested that, and a lot of people stepped in, more Bitcoin was bought, and price continues to make high highs. Price came back down, let's say around end of August, to retest the zone. So this is what we wanted to see. We wanted to see a retest of the zone that price broke out of, and come back down and retest it. So we retested this area, made some more highs, and came back and retested again. But this time around, price did not hold. And I think in between that point, during the month, I posted in our Telegram group to set expectations of what would happen. Every time we do get these sort of breaks in Bitcoin coming down to a key level, it gives the altcoins an opportunity to gain some momentum, because some altcoins are still down 80% on their all-time highs. Some may recover, some may not, but the ones that have stood the test of time will do so. So we had a retest of the 112k level, and price broke down below, which for us is it's not the worst thing that could happen, but it's normal, healthy market activity. When price broke back down below, this was the key area where price started to make the uptrend and making the new all-time highs, which was, what's that, 108k or 110k-ish, 108k. So we came back down to retest that level, which is normal. And we wanted to make sure to see if there's enough buyers who are going to step in aggressively to continue the momentum upwards. Right, so this is where we're at now. So we've retested another level we broke out of. So this was the level we broke out of in July. It got retested at the beginning a month later in August. And price made some more momentum on making higher highs. We came back down again to retest that same level. What the market done is this, it's not a market manipulation, but it showed that it supported that level, and people probably would have stepped in to, especially traders who wanted to go long, would have stepped in to say, right, yeah, it supported that level. We're gonna make some more higher highs, and obviously we didn't, and we came back down again. And we're now retesting another level. This level now is 108k level. What we want price to do now, we're in this little pocket. These lines are the same lines we've drawn, and we will leave them on throughout the time, because price always goes back to these key levels. If you want to see more momentum to the upside, price has to break this resistance. So the resistance of 112K is now a key level. So price breaks above the 112K, we might see momentum up to now break above, back to 116 would be now another key level that we'll be looking at. Just get rid of that one. So unless we break back up that price above this level, we're going to either go sideways or we're going to be looking to go lower. Okay, and any going lower is still healthy in the current market. So I'm just going to switch to the weekly, and I'm going to show you guys something on a monthly as I'll get to it. Let's get rid of that. So one of the things I've always said with the candles is that it always paints a very clear picture as to what the market is planning on doing or has done. What we've got that's very significant here on is this rejection. We got rejected here on the 14th of July. And then we've got rejected again here on the 11th of August. As you see, prices have constantly been making higher highs, but the volume has been decreasing. This rejection here was it is a key indicator for what price might be doing in the next few weeks and months. If we continue to go sideways within this area between 108K and 120K, call it, that's perfectly fine. We could make some more higher highs above that. We need, if price goes below or comes back down to test this level, actually, let's put this as a line for a test. Where my lines come? So let's put this line here. We'll add this line in. So 100K. We might get a little bit of support here at the 105K. So I don't want to draw too many lines because I always try to keep the chart as clean as possible because you do not need a lot on your chart to be able to trade or invest. So this is our next, what I always say, people try and say, oh, what's price going to go to next? Is it going to 130K? Is it going to 150K? Is it going to 100K? Is it going to 0? We don't know. What we want to do is take it level to level. So each one of our levels are significant. So the next level that we will be looking at is 105K. Price is now here, 110. We want it to either break back above and take out this candle and continue making higher highs, or we want to see a support here at 105K. If price doesn't, any aggressive correction that we're going to get over the next few weeks and months will probably bring us back down to the 100K level, which is a significant round number. A lot of people will probably look to take profits here, or a lot of people will look to scale in, and it will just depend on what the market sentiment is at that time. Are we getting more buyers or are we getting more sellers? And it obviously, news in the market will obviously play a factor on what price wants to do at the time as well. As I've always said, 70K mark has always been an area of interest for me, but it's very early days. Going on to the monthly now, and this is gives us a very true picture as to what is happening. So we've circled this candle because it's a significant candle, and we go back to the past. So 1st of April 2021, we had this strong, we're on a monthly chart now. So each one of these candles represents a whole month of trading and investing for Bitcoin against the USD pair. So this month here, 21st of April, it clearly shows that it was a bit of in limbo. We didn't get a full candle, but we had a candle here, but not with an aggressive sell-off. So as price came back and made another high. Here we had a nice green candle, healthy candle, but then it was a lot of aggressive selling off and profit taking was made in 21st of November, and we made lows. Every time we've had a very strong red candle, bar one, and I'll show you where, price has made the lower lows. Okay, here we had not the strongest one. It wasn't it wasn't an indicator that it was a strong sell-off. What we want to see is a long wick for the candle and a healthy body, a red body, to show that it's cooling off time. Likewise for when price is going to make further gains up. We had same here. It was just nothing spectacular, middle of the ground. What we had here on the 1st of December 2024, me personally, I would have been, this is an area that we're going to see very strong correction. But what followed in a month took out that red candle. And obviously that's what we want to look at. What is the following candle after a red candle or the monthly candle to see what price might do. So obviously this was indication that more buyers are in the market, and we had a very short, 3-month sell-off of BTC investors taking profit before we made more gains to make higher highs. So last month we made a high of 123K. No, sorry, July we made a high of 123K. Last month, August, we closed at so the close here was what was the close? 108K. But it's the sell-off here that is what we need to pay attention to. Depending on how September goes, September either needs to take out this high for us to give us indication that we are going to continue making higher highs, or if September closes as a red candle, we know we're going to definitely be looking at going at lower prices. Anything below the 100K is definitely an indication that we're going to be looking at lower prices and cheaper opportunities to get into Bitcoin and get it at a discount, which is ultimately what you want to do. You want to get Bitcoin at its cheapest price, scaling. If you want to say, all right, okay, price goes to 100K, I'm going to put 25% of the total amount I want to invest in Bitcoin. And likewise, if price drops down to another 10%, 20%, 30%, you want to then scale in some more into Bitcoin. So that's how you want to look at the market. And like I said, you don't want to necessarily try and predict, but you want to just take it from month to month, week to week, level to level. And what we are, like I said, where we are now is, I'm just going to take off some of these lines. Let's just current screen. So where we are now, we've had a weekly red candle mid-July. We've had another one a month later in August. We need greens to now take out these candles. Otherwise, we are going to be looking at lower prices. So 100K is a round psychological number that price probably will aim to go head towards. If price goes below 100K, then we know we're going to be looking at lower lows. Any questions? Feel free to unmute. Or have you got questions in the chat? I don't know if there was any questions in the chat, John. No? Perfectly fine. Right, let's go on to our next presenter. John? You're on mute if you're speaking.
Yeah.
Or you're giving
Everybody
mute.
hear me?
Yeah, now I can.
All right, good. All right, welcome, Wilton. I think I just saw Dr. Wilton join. So welcome. And let's get the slides on here. All right. All right, can everybody see my screen? Can anybody see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Okay, good. So let's go into the updates for this month. What we've had since our last meetup, which is basically most of August, and all going in a little bit into September now. Of course, you guys already know where we are on the agenda and what will be coming up next. We shared that previously, but once I finish the updates, Malik will be doing African stablecoins. And then we'll have...
John, are you talking?
I
I don't think we can hear you.
Can't hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, John.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yes. We can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Okay. So then we'll have the perspective on Silicon Valley from African American perspective with Kevin Tucker, which is coming up after that in the second hour. And then we'll have time for Q&A, and we'll extend that if we need to. So what's been happening, and this is kind of the the macro side, right? Looking at everything that's going on in its
I
context.
think I can't hear him. Can you hear him, Isaac?
Yeah, Kevin, I
Yeah,
think it's on your side.
Kevin, maybe
we can hear John.
either
Yeah, let me
check audio
rejoin.
settings. Audio settings, yeah. Okay. So the market has been expanding, approaching 4 trillion. I think we already hit 4 trillion for a short while there. 4 trillion in the market, which is big for Bitcoin digital assets and growing institutions. And the big difference here from what's happened previously is in the last cycle, so I've been in this market for about 7, 8 years now, mostly it was driven by regular people. We call it retail investors, which would be most of us, right? Who have been coming in and putting our money in. But this time it's really being driven by BlackRock and MicroStrategy and, Metaplan. All these big companies are coming in, putting huge amounts of money. Now the 401ks in the US and retirement accounts and all kinds of things. So we're talking about really huge amounts of money, which is really driving this expansion of the market this time, which is why a lot of people think that this could be a super cycle, meaning we don't just go down at the end of the year and then have a low and then go up again, but it could just keep on going up for months, if not years, continually. I hope that happens, right? US leadership, right? So we got the Genius Act, which we talked about a couple months ago now, which established the first comprehensive framework. And what I've been seeing as I've been researching for our latest meetup is that you see Ghana and you see Nigeria and you see countries all across Africa and all around the world now who are all putting in legal frameworks as well. And I think a lot of that is driven by the fact that the US did this back in July. Okay? And then Asian innovation. Asian markets are advancing in blockchain as well. A lot of CBDCs are very popular on that side. Obviously, China has their EU1 CBDC. Very different, by the way. I want to make sure everybody knows this. The CBDC is completely controlled centrally. We talked about this before. A lot of people in China were having issues where they couldn't access, or things got stopped on their money, right? That's completely the opposite of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is completely open. Nobody can stop your transaction. It's completely free, right? So I'm a big proponent of Bitcoin, but CBDCs are out there, and those are something that's happening a lot right now within China as well. We go to presentation mode, see if that looks good. All right. There we go. All right, so the regulatory breakthroughs, like we talked about, we have the Genius Act, right? And there's also the Clarity Act. We have banking guidance that says banks can now handle. In fact, we just got guidance that came out like this morning. I was listening to, I didn't update the slide, where it says now on Wall Street, they're going to be able to offer spot Bitcoin, spot digital assets. So you could have Bitcoin, Ethereum, not just like the stock, but actually the actual Bitcoin, right? So that's going to make it get even bigger. Almost positive that when we start seeing that, there are people I've been talking to for months, and they're like, oh, we don't want to hear it. Now they're like, hey, John, thanks for telling me about that. So, things are shifting pretty fast. And lots of adoption by the US government and governments in Africa and around the world now. So we have a lot happening. Of course, again, like I said, especially for Africa and diaspora, I'm a big fan of Bitcoin, not such a big fan of CBDCs, right? Because CBDCs at any time they can say, you know what, I don't like that white shirt you're wearing. We're going to stop your money, right? Bitcoin, you can send it no matter what. You can send it to Zambia. You can send it to Zimbabwe. You can send it to Nigeria. You can send it anywhere you want, and you don't have to ask anybody's permission. So that's big. All right. There's another one that I just added in. Ethereum has been, the last few months, I'd say about 2-3 months ago, people were like, oh, Ethereum's not doing anything and nothing's going to happen with Ethereum. Ethereum is just flat. I think, Isaac, you might have done some analysis of it a few months ago. And we're like, hey, nothing happened with Ethereum. That all changed in like the last month or two. Okay. Now Ethereum is like shooting off the charts. I haven't done the chart analysis of it, but I think we've doubled like since the beginning of the year. And that a lot of that is driven with a lot of this stuff that's happening. This guy right here, Tom Lee, he's the chairman of BitMine. They just added it. You can see at the bottom of the 54,937 Ethereum worth 237 million. This guy is on every channel, CNBC, Bloomberg, you name it, talking about, Ethereum. And it makes sense, to be honest with you, because if you think about it, Ethereum, and Vitalik Buterin is a guy who created Ethereum, by the way, but Ethereum is behind every stable coin. Pretty much all the major stable coins are on Ethereum. Okay, all of the transactions you're seeing happening there, a lot of the other tokens, coins, meme coins, they're all backed by Ethereum. And Ethereum is probably like the second longest running, strongest blockchain that we've had out there after Bitcoin. So it makes a lot of sense that you're seeing all this momentum. And there is another thing, which I'll call the darker side, right? Which is that Ethereum is staked. Does anybody know what I mean by when I say Ethereum is staking? Anybody know what that is? Staking versus mining? Anybody know what that is? What staking is?
You can give me a refresher, please.
Sure. All right. So Adrian, what staking is basically, if you have, a pile, let's say that we've got like 1 million Ethereum out there, and let's say you got 100,000 of them, and Malik has 100,000. Let's say I've only got 500 of them, whatever it is. Edna's got, 100,000. The people who have more are able to actually make more of the coin. But people who have less, number one, you can't make more of the coin unless you have a certain amount. And then the other thing is that you also, the people who have more can actually say, oh, we're not going to approve this transaction, right? So it basically means that if you've got the big money, you've got the big stack of coins, you can actually control. And I think that that's probably a lot of what Wall Street likes about Ethereum, even though it's a great coin, and a great blockchain. Where Bitcoin is different. Bitcoin, let's say that, I've got 100,000 and Isaac's got 100,000. We all have 100,000, right? Everybody on here, I can see, Malik, Adrian, Edna. Everybody's got 100,000 Bitcoin, which obviously you'd be madly wealthy if that was the case. But anyway, it doesn't make a difference though. Let's say somebody else comes in, they got one fraction of a Bitcoin, they can still send it, and we can't stop them. Okay, so Bitcoin, mining, even though people complain about it, it's which one it sounds more free to you? The one where the people who have the most stack can say who uses it, or the one where anybody can use it no matter how little they have? Or if I reframe it, which one do you think is best for African diaspora in terms of usage? Any guesses? Adrian, come back to you.
Sounds like the second one. Am I
Bitcoin,
getting
okay.
that? Yeah.
Mining, yeah, exactly. Right. So that's the big difference. I've got nothing against Ethereum. Use it all day. Think it's a great blockchain, but it's just very important to understand that the people in suits and, in the corporate executive suites, they can basically buy control of this, where that really can't happen with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is almost no matter what. I don't care where you are. You're sitting in Ghana, you're sitting wherever, you can still send it. Even if you have a tiny, small amount of Bitcoin, you can't be stopped, right? Which is powerful. But Ethereum is taking off. It's going up. Great, good on them. And that's what's happening there.
John, would you say the liquidity is the key? Like you were talking about the pools of different, because there's all the different staking, right? Because you can join a pool and then you can kind of contribute, and I guess like with Uphold and some of these other exchanges, like I know Coinbase, you can kind of join that pool and benefit in the staking. So I guess there's a pro and a con to it, right?
Yeah, so you can, that's true. You can join those pools. I mean, like, let's say you're on Coinbase, you got some Ethereum, you can put it on there. I use Coinbase, everybody uses Coinbase, right? Now, the thing is, though, if they're making a decision like, oh, this transaction goes through or not, they're not going to ask me, right? Even though I do have my Ethereum out there, because I don't have enough, right? I forget what the amount is. I think it's like 10,000 or something to start staking. It's a pretty good amount, right? So unless you have that much, you really don't get any say-so, but you will get the rewards. You'll get your 4%, your 5%, whatever it is, right? You will get the rewards, but you're not going to get the control, the voting, the decision about, what happens on the blockchain. So, but yeah, you can definitely join a pool. Coinbase is very popular. There's a lot of other ones out there, which is why a lot of these big institutions are buying it up, because, they want to have the number where they can not only make the reward, but they can also have say-so about what gets approved and what happens on the blockchain. But yep, that's a great point. Okay. All right. So Africa's blockchain renaissance, we got the VC boom, right? Venture capitalists are moving big time into Africa. Although usually what happens is they'll usually back like a Western founder, and then maybe they'll have that Western founder will partner with somebody who's from Africa. I have not seen a lot where it's only venture capital money going purely to African founders without there being Western founder, but there is money definitely going into Africa at this point, and into the blockchain space. So a lot of investor content. Everybody wants to get in because this is a huge market, right? And for us, African diaspora, this should be the market that this is our home, this is our motherland. We should absolutely be getting into this market, right? This is, this is not something that you miss out on. This is once in generations opportunity to be a part of that. G20 Spotlight, South Africa is hosting a historic G20 November summit. I think the first one to take place on African soil. So that's a big indicator that, Africa is starting to have more weight and people are starting to look to, to what's happening in Africa. And AI and blockchain, I was listening to a session on City Legends where they talked about, Larry Fink was talking about the BlackRock founder. He was talking about how basically the two key things for future technology for banking and finance is going to be AI on the one side, right? So you got AI, and then the money, the tokens, and the payments are all going to be blockchain. So, this is one of the most powerful guys running one of the most powerful companies. That's what they're talking about. This is what's happening. We're seeing this stuff happening, of course, in Africa for financial inclusion, because like I said, especially with Bitcoin, it doesn't matter if you have one Satoshi, which is like 100,000th, 100 millionth, whatever it is, of a Bitcoin, or whether you have like 100,000 Bitcoin, you can still send your Bitcoin no matter what, right? So that is really big for financial inclusion. All right, Nigeria. My family's home country on my dad's side. And the transaction volume, right? 59 billion in crypto transaction volume, with 85% from retail and professional users. All right, we've got 40% stablecoin dominant, so lots of stable coins because everybody wants to get their hands on dollars, and now they can because they can do it using the stable coins in Nigeria's, on the blockchain. So everybody is pretty excited about that. They can use remittance instead of sending like 20% fee on, Western Union or something like that, or MoneyGram. They can send it with like $1 or 20 cents to send, that on the stablecoin network blockchain, which is usually backed by Ethereum, of course. All right. And then there are others, but Ethereum is really popular. And then 2025 regulatory shift on Nigeria. I've been kind of part of this debate on and off online for some years, but they tried to ban crypto like 2 or 3 times. I'm glad to see that they've changed their minds now and they are backing it. They're putting in, regulation in place, and it is now being supported as part of the government's policy to back basically digital assets, which is smart. It took a little while, but glad we got there. All right, Kenya. So Kenya for financial inclusion, right? We have Kyberia blockchain. This is just technology. It's economic liberation for communities historically excluded from traditional banking. It's from Afrobit founder. And Nairobi's Kyberia slum sees Bitcoin adoption of daily transactions via Africa's Innovative Finance Initiative. So this is pretty cool. These guys are using Bitcoin, sending it around in basically what effectively is a slum area. But in fact, if they hold on to it, they're probably going to have a lot of wealth flowing into that area. 2025 Virtual Summit and assets, that's coming up as well. And they have regulation they're putting in Kenya. Seems like pretty much everybody's following suit on this now, now that we've seen a lot of that happening out of the US. And then stable coins reduce remittance costs in sub-Saharan Africa. So like we said, where the fees used to be, 10%, 12%, a lot higher. Now, the fees are super low because sending stable coins is really cheap, right? And you're not end up with that predatory kind of, predatory pricing anymore. There we go. All right, so Africa and diaspora. Anyway, engagement with digital assets, right? So we got wealth building. Everybody is out here and lots of wealth is being built. I'm sure if you've been following for several years, we've been doing these meetups for like, whatever it is, 8 years, 7 years. If you started out at the beginning, hopefully you build some wealth using this, and there's still plenty of time to build wealth. The calls we hear for, and it depends. Obviously, you heard the analysis that Isaac was giving. The longer term analysis, we hear a lot of calls by 2030 for $1 million Bitcoin. We hear a lot of people calling for, Bitcoin to be at $250,000 by the end of the year. We will see what happens. There's no guarantees of anything, but we are hearing some very high numbers being thrown around very consistently now. So it used to be like, oh, you have one person says it's going up, one person is going down. We're not hearing that now. We're hearing almost everybody saying they're expecting these pretty high numbers. So more wealth to be built. Remittance revolution, right? As we talked about, it's super cheap to send money, to anywhere you want. Use Bitcoin, use Stellar, use, stable coins, use whatever you want. Use Binance Coin. We use that a lot, especially my team is based in Singapore, same as my team. And that, is making it really easy for people to send money. It's not just Africa, Southeast Asia, Philippines, Latin America. You can send it anywhere you want, which is great, right? All right. And then we have asset tokenization. So emerging projects focus on tokenizing African assets. And what we're doing, we're seeing things like gold being tokenized, rare earths and minerals, that like all the stuff we use for our phones and our computers, all that stuff comes from rare earths and minerals that come out of Africa. So if we can see those tokenized, instead of it just going to a Chinese firm, a Western firm, it means that you can have Africans who can actually get access to that liquidity, that money as well. African Americans, African diaspora, who can actually get access to that and unlock those investments as well using tokenization. So a lot going on here. And then the Caribbean, CARICOM, Caribbean on my mom's side, and the paving the digital path, right? So CBDCs, we have the Bahamas Sand Dollar, which is the world's first central bank currency, fully launched central bank currency in 2020. And then Jamaica's JAMDEX and Eastern Caribbean Central Bank's Dcash. And so lots of CBDCs going on throughout the Caribbean. Again, I've told you how I feel about the CBDCs because it only takes one press of a button with somebody who says, oh, I don't like, the sweatshirt you're wearing, and they can stop your money. But nonetheless, these CBDCs are rolling out. Remittance optimization. So obviously you are able to send money back and forth. A lot of people are working in the US, Canada, UK, whatever it is, and they're able to send money back very easily using stable coins, using different digital assets. Tourism is now starting to integrate digital payments and blockchain as well for payments, which is great. And CARICOM, which is the Caribbean group of nations, I've forgotten the exact name of the acronym, has launched a regional dialogue. So they're trying to get everything in line around the region. So everybody's in alignment on how they're going to be using, digital assets, blockchain. A lot of people do actually base in a few Caribbean nations as well for their, for tax purposes, things like that as well. All right, now Asia. So many of you know I was based in Asia for a number of years, and always a lot happened over in Asia. All right, so CBDCs, as we said, China is the original kind of creator of the CBDC, and they are influencing many African global digital currency strategies as well. With that, I think Ethiopia has been partnering with them in their Bitcoin mining as well. So China does a lot of Bitcoin mining, but their main play has been the CBDCs, central bank digital currencies, also as part of what's it called, BRICS. They've been also, I think, trying to find, kind of their currency unit, although that seems to have stopped a little bit with Trump in right now, or at least maybe still been done in the background. But nonetheless, China definitely leads these CBDCs. And as I talked about, and anybody looks it up, you can look it up and find out, there are, I guess, pros in terms of it's super efficient, right? There are cons in terms of every now and then you hear about them saying, a bunch of people across China saying they can't access their money. So you can weigh that up. Infrastructure investment, right? So Asia's substantial blockchain infrastructure, it's accelerating. You got Singapore, you got Hong Kong, you got lots of investment happening. South Korea has been a leader for a long time in this as well. Japan, where they have MetaPlanet, investing in tons of Bitcoin. They're like the MicroStrategy of Japan. These guys are putting guys and gals are putting a lot of money and a lot behind cryptocurrencies, digital assets in different ways. And then cross-continental collaborations, right? In partnership opportunities emerge between African startups and Asian tech hubs. And there's a lot of this Afro-Asia. For those of you who are not aware of this history, there used to actually be what we call the Maritime Silk Road. So there used to be a ton of trade. This is back before Columbus, okay? A bunch of trade between Asia and Africa. And that was like all up and down the east coast of Africa, where you got Zanzibar, Tanzania, Ethiopia used to have access to the water before colonization. So they're basically reestablishing those trade between Asia and between Africa. And so there's a lot of that happening. Anybody's on the African continent, I'm sure you're aware and you're seeing that. So a lot happening on the Asia side. In fact, they had these huge boats I remember I was in Singapore, and they had these huge boats, and it fit like 7 of Columbus's Santa Maria, whatever boats or whatever inside. They used to sail these from China. Zheng He was one of their, their admirals or whatever, and they would sail back and forth with Africa, and they would have giraffes and all kinds of trade. These boats were huge, and you never hear about that. All you hear about like the Columbus's little boat, but you could fit like 8 of them inside of that one Chinese, trade ship. Anyway, challenges and risks: navigation, the crypto landscape, so security threats, right? Obviously, there's scams. Be careful. There's always somebody trying to scam you, right? Be careful. Pig Butcher, I don't know exactly what that scam is, but apparently, that's one of them. High yield investment scams. People are like, oh, we're going to give you 50% on your money. We'll give you 100%. If it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. So don't go for that. Regulatory fragmentation, right? So inconsistent regulation. That's going to be the case for a while across African nations. Honestly, I'm trained in law. I don't really sit around waiting for regulation. Government is much slower than regular companies and organizations. So the companies and organizations are always going to be way ahead, and you're going to just have to wait. Government will catch up, but you shouldn't wait for the government to tell you, hey, here's what you need to do, because it's going to take them a long time. And then technical barriers, right? Volatility, energy consumption, obviously is a lot. AI integration is very good. And this is the way to look at AI and blockchain. By the way, AI is almost completely centralized. So if you look at AI, OpenAI or Google or Anthropic, these companies, it's all, and I'm sure Kevin can give you a better perspective on this from Silicon Valley, right? But it is controlled, in a very small group of hands. Right now it's available to everybody, but it's very much controlled in a small group of hands. Blockchain is the opposite. Blockchain is almost completely, like Bitcoin, completely centralized, right? But you can have a Bitcoin miner sitting in Zimbabwe. You can have a Bitcoin miner sitting in Tanzania. You can have a Bitcoin miner sitting in Turks and Caicos. It doesn't matter where they are. You can use it, you can mine it, you can have a node on it. So it's almost completely decentralized, and the two balance each other out, right? So if you have only AI, that means everything is centrally controlled. That's scary. You have only Bitcoin, everything's decentralized, which I'm fine with, frankly, but you got to have the two to balance each other out, okay? So, and then the education gap, which is what we're doing here. Also, please check out what we're doing on Patreon. We're trying to expand so that we can support local groups like BitFiasi in Ghana, and we have the Ethiopian blockchain groups and others. We want to support these, so we're going to try to have a consistent Patreon where we're able to kind of work with local community groups across Africa and diaspora to be able to then support education and because a lot of people you talk to, they go, oh, the whole thing is a scam. What are you talking about? I mean, I can't tell you how many WhatsApp groups I've been kicked out of for mentioning cryptocurrency. So, a lot of people still don't get that all the money is flowing into this sector, and the money is definitely flowing in, right? So we have a lot of education we need to do. We as global Africa, okay? Road ahead, blockchain is empowering everybody, digital assets, reshaping. This is the next generation of finance, right? Cross-border trade. It's actually open because before, from Africa, diaspora, even redlining in the US, we were pretty much shut out of being a part of global trade, right? Now we can. You can use stable coins, you can use Bitcoin, you can do all these things, and you can actually have access, start projects, collaborate, do whatever you're going to do, which is what we're doing this for, right? We want to encourage that. Regulatory clarity in the US and Africa is unlocking growth because now people see, oh, the governments are on board. So obviously things are starting to move. Innovation, education, working together, cross-continental collaboration, a lot happening here. As I was like the Denzel Washington quote of each one teach one, at least I think it's him, right? So continue to let other people know what is happening out here. And I think that is everything. Structure tomorrow. Yep. Do we have any questions before we go on and hand over to Pamali?
There's a few questions.
All right.
Thanks for that, John. Right. Let's quickly go back.
All right. What do we have first?
Okay. Danielle posted an interesting article actually while you was talking about the Ethereum point and obviously around the Bitcoin. And the article it would be good to get your views on it as well. It's just around what recently happened where Trump's oldest son has staked up, I think, 1.5 billion in a stock that was debuted to hit on I think it was on the New York stock exchange. I don't know if you've heard anything about that or if that's been on your radar.
Yeah, so the Trump family's been investing heavily. And here's the way that I look at it, right? I think that a lot of people will complain and say, how dare they? They're getting money out of this, they're making money. I mean, if we're realistic, I can't think of a politician who does not make money from, whatever is hot in their country or their economy, right?
Mhm.
I don't care if you're leading an African nation. I don't care if you're left or right or whatever it is. That's why people spend so much time lobbying government, because they know that if your sector does well, you're going to make money there, right? So obviously, Trump family's in there. They're making money. I don't know all the details of everything they're doing. They have World Liberty Financial. They're making a lot of money. But what I do know is this, is that while they're making money, we as Africa, as diaspora, global Africa, Black people, we have probably the first opportunity in my lifetime and in generations where we can also make money, right? That to me is a difference. Before, the money was being made by a small group of people in, closed rooms, maybe in Silicon Valley, maybe in DC, but the rest of us were not really able to make any money, right? They gave us the money, they gave us access to it after everybody else had already eaten, right? This time, you can go buy your Bitcoin just like everybody else can. You can go stake your Ethereum just like anybody else can. You can send your stable coins and do a project over in Africa or the Caribbean anytime you want, or Latin America, it doesn't matter. So are they making money? I am sure that they are making hand over fist money. But for me, I really don't get into politics deeply because except understanding how it affects us. Because my main concern is, well, as Africa's diaspora, how can we benefit? And this time around, I mean, there are a ton of Black crypto millionaires that have been already minted over the last several years. I'm sure there's gonna be a lot more, right? So am I mad at them because they're benefiting? No, politicians are going to be politicians. Politicians are going to play that game. I don't care if it's renewable energy, if it's Bitcoin, if it's whatever the latest thing is. Some politicians going to make money off it because that's what they do. Okay. But this time around, we can make money off it. So that's the difference to me. Right. And so what I'm concerned about is the fact that we can make money off it. I'm not so concerned about the fact that politicians are being politicians, because politicians are going to be politicians. So that's my thing.
Thanks for that, John. Sorry, does anyone else have any questions, opportunity to unmute, or we can wait till all of the presenters have finished and we can go into the Q&A segment so we can keep things flowing?
I just wanted to, tack on. That was great, John. I think the one thing I do want to emphasize, I said this before, regardless of who is the president, right? Whatever country, this is an open source technology. So it's not gated, right? We can all get a piece of it, let's just say, and contribute or build on the blockchain as a developer or either invest. I think what John's saying is this: now it's become more of kind of autonomous. We don't have to have like this barrier, like before it was like you had to get permission. Now it's just kind of up to you. And I think the innovation is just incredible. And I think that's it's like you said, it's the cycle that we're going through right now. And I've seen crypto go through these cycles, and that's just the nature. And you kind of have to figure out, hey, where do I want to, how do I want to invest? What do I want to focus on? And I think, like you said, any government, whoever, is a president, that's just a president. They're gonna invest in whatever's hot. AI is hot. They're going to focus on that. So I think right now is a great time to just invest in yourself, and figure out what you can learn and how you can expand your knowledge, because that's the key. Yeah.
Definitely.
Or
Are there other questions for I'll get we'll have an opportunity for more at the end as well. But
we can go over
anything
to
else in the camera real quick right now? Great question. Great discussion.
Cool.
All right, let me hand it over to Pam Malik, and then after that, Kevin, you'll be up. And I'm not sure if you're going to share screen, Pam Malik.
Thank you very much, John, and good evening, everyone from Nigeria. My name is Pam Malik. I'm a Gambian working in Nigeria. I have over 10 years banking experience across various West African markets. In the Gambia, I've worked in the Gambia. I've worked in Sierra Leone, now in Nigeria. I run the fixed income desk in the financial institution that I work. So today I will be sharing what stable coins are. Let me share my screen. I'll go basic, and it's just to educate us more on what these things are, and especially for those that are joining new into the crypto space, to understand what some of these things are and how we're using it here in Africa, especially West Africa. And let me know if you can see my screen.
Not yet. There it is. Okay. Yep. No.
Okay, great. Like I said, I'm going basic, especially for those that are new to the space, and we're looking at stable coins, right? Now, what are stable coins? So before I even go into the definition, this is what we'll be looking at today, right? We'll look at what stable coins are.
Sorry, 1 second, Malik. Can everyone see Malik's screen?
It's still loading.
It's still loading. Malik, you might want to.
There it is. There it is. I got it. I see it.
Yeah, it's on there. You might want to switch off your camera while just increase your bandwidth while you're presenting.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, cool. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, great. Excuse me. Okay. So we'll look at what stable coins are. We'll examine popular stable coins and their fundamentals. And we'll also look at some of the reserves, what's backing stable coins. And then we'll look at how stable coins are being used in Africa. Then we'll look at how to even acquire stable coins. Now, what are stable coins? Stable coins are basically cryptocurrencies that are pegged to real world assets like maybe gold or fiat currencies. Now we have several stable coins in the crypto space, and the most popular we can see here are the USDT, USDC, USD1, which is very of recent, and some current examples of these stable coins. As I mentioned earlier, US Tether, which is the oldest stable coin created in 2014. And it was created by a company, that's the issuer Tether Limited. Now they have a market cap of 144 billion, all right? It's the largest stable coin globally. And the second to Tether is actually USDC, that's the USD coin. It was also issued in 2018 by Circle Internet Financial, and it has a market cap of 33 billion. So it's actually the second largest. World Liberty Financial USD1, which is issued by, I think people think is the Trump family, right? If I'm not mistaken. So yeah. They issued it last year, 2024. And it's pegged to the dollar. All of these stable coins I'm sharing are actually pegged to the dollar. What that means is the value of these stable coins are 1-to-1. It's just like digital dollar. Now, stable coins are actually rapidly growing, right? We've seen John talked about the Genius Act. And I think what that creates is just more recognition for cryptocurrency and stable coins. Now, why are stable coins relevant? Why do people really trust it? Because it is pegged to the dollar. And how is it pegged, right? If you have a company like Tether and they're issuing stable coins, they need to back those coins since they're claiming that every USDT is actually equals to $1 US. So they will have to back it up with either US Treasury or US dollars cash. Now, currently Tether holds about 127 billion US Treasuries, right? It's even bigger than what Germany is holding. It's bigger than what most sovereign nations are holding. Now, that places it ahead of many sovereign nations, right, in holding US reserves. And if you look at Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, most of the reserves they're holding are just maybe Euro bonds and also FX reserve. Nigeria FX reserve is currently circa 40 billion, right? And most of the stats that I'm showing here actually from the US Department of Treasury. Now, this is just to show how big Tether is, right? And how are stablecoins used in Africa? John talked about how Diaspora is using stablecoins to do remittances. Now, stablecoins in Africa are more than, a trading tool. They're becoming like a parallel financial system. If you look at most people, prefer using stablecoins. I live in Africa. If you give me the option, what do I want? If you're sending money to me, is it fiat or stablecoins? I'll prefer stablecoins for many reasons. One is because it's faster. You can send me money now and I can get it now compared to if you're sending fiat to me. Now, what we do with stablecoins, cross-border payments, right? So imagine you have a business, you have an e-commerce business in Nigeria, and you have clients in Senegal, Ghana, that you can sell your products to. So stablecoins open that gate where you can just sell beyond your borders. You can put it online. You can put an e-commerce business, and then a client in Senegal can just open the internet, log into your e-commerce business, and place an order and pay in stablecoins. And settlement is instant. Now, before stablecoins, what used to happen is if you want to buy something from Nigeria, let's say you're in Senegal and you want to buy something from Nigeria, let me even use Ghana as an example, because Ghana is closer to Nigeria. They're basically neighbors. Now, if you're ordering something from Nigeria and you're in Ghana, what happens is you take your Ghana cedis, that's the local currency in Ghana, and you convert it to dollars. So you go to your local bank and source dollars. And then what happens is the bank will source dollars and convert your local currency, that's the Ghana cedis, into dollars, and then remit that dollar to the United States. Remember, it has to go to the United States to clear and come back to Nigeria for that payment to settle. So it will take a longer time, like 2 to 3 business days, for that particular transaction to settle. And that I'm talking about SWIFT here. Now, with stablecoins, it doesn't need to go all the way to the US and come back to Africa, to Nigeria for that transaction to settle. It's just direct. Once you make that payment, the person in Nigeria receives it instantly. Now, a key thing that needs to improve in this space is the supply chain, right? Where if payments are this efficient, right, I think delivery of goods and services should also be efficient. Currently, it's a bit of a struggle. It takes a longer time, perhaps, let's say, sending, a package to Senegal. I think it's even easier sending a packet to United States than sending a packet to Senegal. But once we have improved supply chains, then we would see more improvement in cross-border trades, right? Especially within Africa. Now, people also use it for inflation hedge, right? So if you look at Africa, most of the local currencies that we have here are devaluing on a consistent basis. For instance, Nigeria, there was a time the Nigerian naira was stronger than the US dollar. Now, $1 US is about 1,520 Nigerian naira. And because of this, a lot of people prefer using stable coins as a store of value. So what they do is, maybe I work every month, I get a salary. When I get my salary, I convert it to stable coins just to protect the value. So in the event naira devalues, the value of my money is hedged. And most of the time we use stable coins to do that. Now, we also have P2P trading. Most people use it like what we do in the banking sector or in the bureau de change, where you exchange one currency for the other. People use P2P to trade stable coins. So, and I think the P2P market is really big in this part of Africa, because most of the banks, like John mentioned, were really hostile to crypto. We've seen Nigeria ban crypto, even though they've rescinded on that directive. All the other markets in Africa are actually doing a wait and see. Most of the central banks are not coming out right banning crypto. They're all silent about it, waiting perhaps for, let's say, the bigger markets to take the lead in terms of crypto regulations, and then they can follow suit. And now that we've seen the Genius Act, most of the central banks are, more open to, dialogue and learn more about crypto and see how they can regulate this space. So P2P is actually what's what most people are doing. And P2P is actually peer-to-peer, where you go on an exchange, and then you trade your fiat currency against a stable coin. So if I get a remittance from, let's say, someone in the United States, I can actually take that USDT and convert it to Naira via an exchange. Now, DeFi wallets and financial inclusion. I've mentioned that people use stable coins to hedge against inflation. People also use it to actually look for decent yields, right? So if you're in a market where, like in the markets like the Gambia and Sierra Leone, where you don't have like an active secondary market where you can trade these financial instruments, stable coins open that opportunity for you to actually access bigger markets where you can look at high yields in the DeFi space, and then invest your money in there, and that you see real value. We've also seen some projects coming up where people are doing research in terms of tokenizing government securities. For example, in Sierra Leone, you can see yields as high as 50%, right? Crazy. And in Nigeria, currently yields are around 18% to 20%. So these are double-digit yields, right, compared to the more advanced world. And that's why we're seeing foreign portfolio investors coming into, let's say, the likes of emerging markets like Nigeria to actually take advantage of those yields. So if you have these stable coins where you can actually have access to some of these markets, you can actually get decent yields in that space. Now, business payments. We all know remote jobs are very popular nowadays. You can be in the US, have your company, and then hire a tech guy in Nigeria. And then you don't need to really struggle to find dollars, send it over via Swift, and then it takes like 2 to 3 business working days before the guy gets his pay. People mostly use stable coins to do those things. So people use stable coins. People can use smart contracts to actually manage, business payments, and then get payments across easily and faster. Now, you may be wondering, how do I acquire some of these stable coins? Now, in Africa, we have 2 ways, right? Because banks are not really open to crypto, you can't really, let's say, connect your bank account to, let's say, an exchange directly, and then you can move in and out money. We have some apps like Luno where you can do something like that, but it's not as free as, let's say, you have the Coinbase in the US that you can link your bank account, and then you can easily move money in and out of the exchange. Now, how do we get these stable coins? One is the mobile money. Mobile money is really big in Africa. So what people really do is maybe buy a local SIM card and then load it up with, credit. And it can be an MTN or an Airtel or an Orange money, right? And then once you load it, you can actually use it to buy stable coins, either via an exchange or some of these fintechs. Now, all you need to do is load the credit, select buy stable coins, and transfer via mobile money. And then that's it, the stable coin is in your wallet. The second option is actually P2P trading, which I've mentioned earlier. You go on exchange and then you buy from someone. Most of these exchanges have P2P orders listed where you have different ads of different people or merchants, they call them, on exchanges that you can buy from. So they will put up the rate and you can just select any one of them. And then a pop-up will come up. You will see their bank details, and then you can pay into their account, and then the stable coin is actually deposited into your wallet. Now, remember, most people going into crypto start with stable coins, because you need the stable coins to actually buy all these other cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and the likes. So stablecoin is a very, very important part of the crypto ecosystem. And I think we would see more regulations coming into the stablecoin space, because most of the central banks in this part of the world are worried about how capital is moving in and out of the system without going through the official system, the official banking system. And what that means is the central bank would not have a view of capital flows, inflows, and outflows. Yep. So that's all I have for you. If you have questions, please feel free to unmute or put it on the chat, and then I'll be happy to answer. Thank you.
Any questions for Kamal on the stable coins? And this is really big because I mean this has changed everything. Where before it was hard, if not impossible, to be able to pay, hire, send money to people across, you know, African continent. Diaspora now, it's easy to do it, right? You can just get the wallet address, send it over, 1 minute or 2 minutes, and they're good to go, right? So this is
Exactly.
a game changer. Questions?
And
Anybody have questions?
There was some feedback from Danielle just to say, great info. Thank you for the breakdown via the flow workflow charts. I thought it was very good, comprehensive presentation. So thanks for that, Brother Malik. And there is a question from an iPhone user. Please, what is the Nigerian stable coin pegged to? Is it the Naira or the US dollar? Because my confusion comes as to how it benefits if it's pegged to the dollar.
Yeah, so the Nigerian e-Naira, we call it the e-Naira, is actually a CBDC, right? In fact, I'll call it a failed project because not many people really uses it. Like John said, not a lot of crypto enthusiasts are open to CBDCs. They don't really like it because of the control. Like John said, they may just look at you and say, your face is not looking really good. I don't really like you, so I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to block your money. So the e-Naira is there actually backed by, it's just digitalizing the fiat currency. So you have the Naira, the paper Naira, and then you have the e-Naira, which is the digital Naira backed by the government. So there's a slight difference when you look at stable coins, right? Stable coins mostly are issued by private entities, right? And they're backed by maybe US treasuries, and they're pegged to the dollar, most of them. We also have other stable coins like pegged to euro, like the EURC, right? But the e-Naira is a digital, it's a CBDC, that's the central bank digital currency. So it's actually pegged to the Naira. So whenever if the value of Naira is 1,500 to the dollar, the e-Naira will be 1,500 to the dollar. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, iPhone user, if you want to is kind of add your question or say who you are, but as Malik said, you know, am I on mute? I hope the e-Naira that was like it didn't go well. I'll be politically correct. It did not go well because people really just you know they didn't trust putting all their money in the government's hands, basically like that, and being like, okay, well you guys just shut it off whenever you want. Most people are like, no, I don't think I'm going to do that, right? So didn't go real well. I can't say that I blame people, but yeah, can't say I blame them.
I think, yeah, the thing I wanted to mention is like stable coins. I mean, there's a lot of these, tokens. You got to kind of do your due diligence, research the company, the founders, folks that are behind it, backing it. And I think the thing is it fluctuates, and that's the bigger part. And sometimes if there's a lot of action, and there's a lot of hype behind it, I kind of have to do my research before I take a leap of faith, because like you said, it could be some things that could, derail it, and it even has a great vision. So, but there's also, people that are behind it. You got to really figure out what they're trying to do and what their roadmap is for the future.
Yep.
Thanks for that, Kevin.
Questions or iPhone user? Do you want to follow up on that at all? I see, Cecile, you have a question. Is stability of the stablecoin based on?
Yes, I do.
Sorry, actually.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. So my question, right, was kind of geared towards like, what is the benefit of any? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you're fine. I'm gonna do some muting, but yeah, you're fine.
Okay. So I'm asking, it's like, what is the benefit of any country having their own stable coin pegged to their own fiat currency? Because I guess because the dollar is the reserve currency, which is always going to be obviously dominant. So if I wanted to hedge, let's say the Naira, I would want it obviously tied to the dollar and not any other fiat currency, because obviously the dollar is worth more everywhere than anywhere else in the country. So I guess that's where my question was lying.
And sorry, what was your name?
My name is Gamaliel.
Emilio. Okay. All right. So anybody want to tackle that? I've got an answer, but I'm going to let somebody else tackle it first, maybe. Anybody else want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, I think I can take that.
Okay.
So most. Sorry, I think there's an echo.
You have two connections, Palmolic. You have two connections. I think that's what's happening.
Okay. Let me just.
Yeah, you have to mute one of them. Yeah, there you go. I think you're good.
Cool. Okay. So he asked, what will be the benefit for, let's say, African governments to have a stable coin? One is it can give them access to more investors. For example, if, let's say, Nigeria has a security they're floating, and then it's widely open, I can be in the Gambia. If I have access to stable coins, I can actually go into that space, buy that that stable coin, maybe issued by Nigeria, and then invest in that security. Perhaps the security is actually offering a higher yield from where I am. So most likely investors are chasing higher yields, so they will likely go there. Right? So that gives the government the opportunity to borrow less, right? If, let's say, what I can get in my country maybe is about 20%, but if I float it out and then people in the US are getting maybe below 5%, and I offer 10%, people will rush it, right? So people rushing in at 10%, whilst if I just restrict it in my country, I'll just get something like 20%. So that's a higher borrowing cost to the government. So the more people, the more investors have access to a particular market, right? The more the government can borrow cheaper. So that is one option of government having some of these stable coins.
And I'm going to comment on this. So, Gamaliel, a few things here. We assume that the US dollar is always going to be the global reserve currency. I mean, if you listen to BlackRock, you listen to Larry Fink, you listen to that, there's a good chance that's not going to be the case. Okay, it could end up being Bitcoin, it could end up being something else, most likely not. The dollar is not going to be forever. So that's one thing we all need to keep in mind. Okay, I mean, if you look at what it costs to buy a house, like back in the day, okay, let's say in the 80s, if you were around back at that time, many of you were not, but some of you were. Okay, a house in that today, I was too young to buy a house, but anyway, the cost of a house now is like 20 times on average what it was then, 25 times, okay? And that's not because houses have gotten that much better, whatever, it's because the dollar's gotten weaker and the dollar keeps getting weaker, okay? Now, to your other point though, Gamaliel, that yes, most stable coins can be pegged to the dollar. I mean, I've got lots of family in Nigeria. I've watched the Naira go down to the floor, just worth nothing. I mean, so pegging it to the Naira would be pointless, right? That's like pegging your money to, I don't know, you name it, right? Like subprime loans back in 2008. I mean, there's no point in pegging your money like that. However, just because people are pegging stuff to the dollar does not mean that the dollar is going to be this is going to probably extend the life of the dollar as a reserve currency, because a lot more people are going to use it because it's stablecoin. So I think that's smart. I think that's really smart for the US, smart for, definitely. But number one, I could not see a scenario where I would ever think of like pegging my stablecoin to the Naira or to some other, because all the other fiat money is just that much worse than the dollar. If the dollar's going down, they're going down faster, okay, in terms of value. And number two, we should never assume that dollar's forever going to be the currency for the world, which is why we keep telling you about Bitcoin and all these currencies, because the dollar at some point is not going to be the world's currency. I mean, we got to keep history intact, okay? There's like 5,000 years of world history that we know about. There's probably a lot more than that, frankly, but we know about, okay, Africa was actually on top for a very long time. I'm not going to get deep into that. But bottom line is, America's like 250 years old, okay? And the dollar wasn't even around for all of that, So the dollar is not that old. It definitely has not been the reserve currency except like after World War II. So we should not have the mindset that the dollar will always be on top like that. So I don't know if that answers, Gamel, your question, or if anybody else wants to comment, but yeah, we got to be real careful on that one.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. That actually makes sense. I just wanted to confirm my thought process that it is actually strengthening the dollar and extending and prolonging the the reserve hegemony, whatever, like the dollar hegemony. But you are right. It is the tides are changing, and other currencies are, well, cryptocurrencies at the most are like kind of challenging that dollar status. So it seems like the most benefit is actually opening the market, as the other guy said in his answer, actually opening the market up to other the Africans and other continents to be able to participate even better in the global market. So that
You got
definitely
it. Definitely. And then I saw in the comments, I think Dr. Wilton was commenting, um, he's got a project we might hear about in the future that's gold backed. And that would be another one. So like gold back, real world asset backed coins, tokens, those are actually going to be very valuable as well if you can prove the backing, right? That's also going to be pretty valuable also. So Bitcoin, gold backed tokens, things like that. I think those are going to become very powerful in the future. Dollar is going to keep its continued trend. I don't think it's going anywhere tomorrow, but don't sit there holding dollars, because I mean, I remember there's a house, I grew up in. I was checking it out. It's like it cost like 20, 25 times what it did back then. I was like, I wish we kept that house. But anyway, it's because the dollar's weaker. It's not because that house is like so much more valuable. It's because the dollar's just getting weaker. Okay. Any other thoughts or comments before we go on to hand it over to Kevin?
I think just to add on to that, I think the beauty in it is there's now more ways to look at how these stable coins are going to empower us, and I think, but like I said again, you got to do your due diligence, look at the actual the founders and figure out the company, what their vision is, and then kind of do your research. But you're right, the Naira, I remember some of those like times where you're just like, okay, how low is it going to get? And there's a part that you kind of have to think about, but you kind of have to look at that in any investment, the high volatility and the risk associated with it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You got it. All right. Did you want to go ahead and take over there, Kevin? And let's talk about
wealth. We're going to talk about sovereign wealth. Yeah. I'm excited to meet everybody. Thank you. It's been great to have this discussion today, and enjoyed listening to all the presenters before me. Let me share my screen. I got a lot of tabs open, so forgive me. I'm gonna be pretty organized here in a minute. I guess got to get my presentation right here. But I'm in San Francisco, California, and that's it's a kind of the epicenter of all this discussion around these topics. So this is one of the reasons why I want to present. I'm excited today, and also kind of give you a little background about myself. Give me a second. There we go. So can you see the presentation?
coming up right now.
Okay. There we go. Present. All right. So this is going to be a discussion around cryptocurrency and adoption in Africa, but we're going to talk about other things like sovereign wealth, which is, I think, the bigger component. The discussion, I want it to be, very, well-rounded. I don't want to just talk. I want also, if you want to chime in at any point, or say, maybe you want to add a comment, please feel free to do so. But I'll give you a little background about myself. I'm, here in Silicon Valley. I've been here for over, 10 years. I've worked in, a lot of this, what I would consider kind of what they call the FANG companies like Amazon and Meta, and actually worked at Binance US for a little bit. And kind of my segue into cryptocurrency was because when I was here during that time, when it was kind of in its early days, like 2014, 2013, it's been around, here. And it was kind of like knowledge that people kind of it was just like common topic that you would hear. People would say, hey, you know anything about crypto? What do you think about it? and then you kind of get, it piques your curiosity, right? But as I worked in tech and I got familiar with the terminology, then I started to kind of do my own due diligence and research and figure out, what is this? What is cryptocurrency? How is this, going to impact this world, and that we live in? And I think the bigger thing is having an understanding of, the financial system, right? If you want to get real, the financial system is broken, and that's the key. Understanding why we ended up with all this trillions of dollars of debt, but then yet, like we heard before, all these things that are addressing, the dollar, right? The dollar of its value. We keep hearing it. The dollar is losing its value. What does that mean, right? But really, the truth is, when you think about it, is it backed by anything, right? Backed by gold, silver, some of the precious metals, and things like that nature, or natural resources of that country. So this is kind of my talk. Is going to address some of those things, but just to tell you a little bit about me, I worked at Binance, and I worked alongside of a lot of great people who have gone on to some other companies that you probably have heard of, like Coinbase and Circle and Gemini, and you know, Kraken. And but the good thing is, for me, I got a chance to, peek under the hood, right? Working at a crypto company is kind of different from any other institution in my mind, because with the regulations in the US at that time, and the way that you have to look at the financial system, you basically have to kind of reverse engineer it, because you're creating a bank, right? So there's all these things that come up into the picture where you have to get educated, because as a person that's working in that kind of fintech, industry, you have to have the knowledge, because you're going to be confronted with a lot of things that you probably weren't, like credit scores and FICO, and you hear all these things that in the cryptocurrency community, they kind of don't exist, right? But you still need to understand how the US, I'd say the US financial system kind of is sort of structured, right? That what's that framework look like? But the biggest part is, for me, once I got my knowledge of how important cryptocurrency is, because we know it's a open source software, so there's no real, gatekeeper, right? And that is important, because if you want to design some way to build wealth, you can do it. There's nothing stopping you. And I think if you have a good use case, which is you'll see in my presentation, you'll understand why Africa is going to be, I'm telling you, going to dominate in this arena, because Africa has so many natural resources that are untapped, and there's so much investment in cryptocurrency right now in Africa. And some of you might know, but some of you may not. I hear about things every day, but my presentation, really is going to cover some of what I call kind of sovereign wealth, which I think is a term that I think in America it's a little bit different, because we look at it like, oh, well, what's our, what does our asset class look like? But with sovereign wealth is important in Africa, because it can drive economic diversification, fund critical infrastructure. It can help stabilize the economies against volatile commodity prices. And when I say that, I want to emphasize on, there are economic, funds right now, economic investment in Africa, but you really have to understand how cryptocurrency is going to be aligned with a lot of that to drive forward innovation. I'm telling you, with the critical infrastructure things that are happening with AI and some of these other data centers that we hear about, in Bitcoin mining, Africa has become a hot spot. And with all the mining that you hear, like gold and diamond, there's so much wealth that Africa in itself, that's what's brought on a lot of these things. But what I want to really start out with is the key objectives, like with cryptocurrency and all the billions of people that are using crypto in Africa, it enhances the financial access for all. We know that, right? It fosters innovation and technology growth. This is the part that I'm talking about the open source technology, and it supports economic stability and growth. Those are the things that I think are important with Africa. I think, where we are in the world view, there's so much innovation and things happening, but all we hear about is, obviously some things that are negative toward Africa. But I think that's the one thing that you have to do your research on. And when you find out some of this stuff, you're kind of like, really, I never heard of this. You know, I don't know if people know on this call, you know, the man that invented the he has a Bitcoin machine that he actually, the creators it from Africa. That is one of the first. He actually designed the Bitcoin machine and actually created it and built it in China, obviously for the supply chain. But then he brought it to Africa. But the other thing is strategic goals. Develop, you know, develop your regulatory frameworks for security. I think that's the bigger part with any kind of cryptocurrency and mass adoption. You have to have some kind of regulatory frameworks. Those are the things we were talking about with the stable coins. Some of that regulatory framework that needs to be in place helps to protect not only the investor, but the people who are investing in the technology, because that's the thing that's going to help, you know, bring about, you know, growth and, you know, prosperity in the country. Also, promoting education and awareness programs. You know, that's the big thing. I think right now is just, it's a time for us to learn and to educate others about the importance. Digital assets are going to definitely eliminate physical money, you know, and that's just the reality. We're not going to be walking around with dollar bills of any currency in about, I'd say, in a short while now. Because if you think about it, this is the way it works. With inflation, you have to print more money. There's a lot of things that happen that they try to offset, but the reality is you can only do that for so long. And I think that's what we're talking about earlier, is about the dollar's value. You keep hearing it every day. Dollar's value is going down. The dollar's, what is it pegged against? And I think we were saying earlier in the discussion, it was about how to get these, you know, kind of leverage that, right? So you don't want to have a fear mindset. You want to have a growth mindset. And that's why I think encouraging partnerships and, you know, building, especially with local businesses. And I'll tie that in. I'll make you aware of, there's a lot of this type of grassroots, I'd say, with the blockchain. There's a lot of startups, companies that are building out. And you know, the real unique thing about being in Silicon Valley is that I'm on the ground, right? I see a lot of companies that are coming and they're saying, hey, you know what, we've got this, you know, solution for, say, you know, this region of the world, and we want to have an investment. That's the beauty, you know, and it's open source, you know, and you can also read their white paper, and you can kind of look at the founders and research who the actual, you know, founders, so that you know what you're investing in. Whereas when you look at the stock market right now, you go and invest in a company, you don't know really too much. I mean, you kind of know, but you don't really know, you know. And the bigger thing is, I think with the gatekeeping, that this is eliminating a lot of doubt for me. I think Africa is going to become the superpower house for the future with cryptocurrency. So with that being said, understanding, you know, sovereign wealth, again, it's important. It can drive economic diversification, but it also is helpful, you know, because I come to the conclusion that sovereign wealth, you know, these funds, they're already in place in Ethiopia and other Saudi Arabia. There's different places in the world, to China. What's interesting is, you know, with that, you can manage national savings effectively. So say you got a country, you want to build your wealth. It's like a liquidity pool, basically, so that you can help fund projects or things that you want to fund, right? Who doesn't want to see better infrastructure in their own city and village and town or wherever you live, right? You want to see things that you can invest and say, hey, you know what, I've got this fund, I want to invest in this particular region or for this particular cause, for healthcare, for education, agriculture, renewable energy, and things like that that can help me and my community. So that's the reason that I talk about this sovereign wealth. But again, development of these funds is the key, and having a regulatory framework. Also, you know, you can invest in diverse global assets globally. There's things that you can do that are beyond just your average investment. And you know, state-owned, you know, wealth funds are great, but there's also, you know, you can have a unified body of people who are just like, hey, we kind of are aligned on this vision for better healthcare, and we want to invest in this particular, you know, this fund to help drive that. So, and I think in Africa, these funds aid economic development. And I'll show you some articles that'll kind of back up most of what I'm, trying to present here. But I want to keep going with this so you can kind of get a bigger picture of kind of what I'm kind of, trying to present here. Now, cryptocurrency, it's not just a new avenue of investment. It's a game changer because it's basically like collective wealth, right? It's generational wealth. You can look at it as you invest in something that is going to help build a better future for your generations to come. Also, this is the thing about wealth diversification exists, and also, with the, like I said again, the regulatory landscape remains uncertain, but it's evolving. But this is the things that you got to think about when you go into any investment, right? The volatility, what kind of investment and how it will help you and your people. So my bigger thing for me is looking at traditional assets. If you look at the stock market and you invest in something, how is it benefiting us as a people? And I think this is the conversation I come back to all the time. Like, how is it helping my generations to come and my family and the people I know that are, aligned with what's happening in the world? Because I think the diaspora is kind of the key, because I see African Americans in Africa, we're just one. It's in all the people in, Barbados to Haiti, all these are part of this bigger picture. And this is why the sovereign wealth funds is kind of going to tie in this global network, right? Of all these superpower houses that we can build and help elevate ourselves. The other thing is, I also want to talk about, initiatives there's a lot of sovereign wealth funds that are already created. And I'll switch screens here in a minute, and I'll kind of go through. There's a lot that's happening, and it's kind of incredible and mind blowing, but you don't hear about it a lot in the news. I don't know, but for me, you gotta have more or less educate people about what's happening, grow your user base, and innovation, and solutions that are gonna help drive innovation, things that are gonna help like move the country forward. I think are the biggest factors here. And also, blockchain application is expanding, and I think a lot of these funds are driven by innovation. Because if you have this fund that you're able to choose to say, hey, I want to invest in this particular blockchain or this particular project, that's what we were talking about before. This is an open source software, so the DeFi element where you can invest, it decouples you from having to go through traditional funding resources and say, hey, I want to have an investment, I want to go to the bank, and they're going to give me a loan, and then you got to take out, the factor that there's going to be, other things included, such as interest, and and then you might not even break even, so to speak. But with some of this crypto, there's grants and there's things that are available to you on the blockchain side that can help with some of this building that sovereign wealth. Also, the advantages of crypto investments in Africa is, open. It's an open financial system for all. We know about the transparency in the transactions. So that goes back again to understanding the blockchain, how you can have different blockchains for different types of sovereign wealth. Also, the potential growth for investors. I think what I've noticed is there's a lot of people right now. There's a lot of investment in people in Africa who are taking advantage of these sovereign wealth funds that aren't African. And I'll show you here in a minute. Russia, China. There's a lot of investment and a lot of interest. There's Israel. There's a lot of folks, even in America. There's people who are coming in and saying, hey, you know what? Let's set up a sovereign wealth fund. Let's try to make a strategic partnership, and then they're taking advantage of it. So this is something why I think why this is an important discussion, and that's just two different examples here of different sovereign wealth funds. And then this one is basically, it's an article, and I'll get to that, but it points out supply chain and how it's helping Africa drive economic growth and diversification. This one is going into talking about renewable energy and the green transition, which is huge in Africa. If you think about the continent, how Ethiopia is leveraging that right now, and how much revenue they've been able to drive. Plus, they've been able to reinvest it back into their infrastructure, their healthcare, their education, everything. So I'm showing you real live examples of why this global sovereign wealth fund is just it's in its infancy. It's just taken off. but it's gonna, it's gonna take a while before it becomes mass adoption. But like anything, what I'm saying is I would look at what's happening in the country that you're in, if you're in Africa, and find out how you can tap into some of this, especially right now, because it's basically just beginning. And these are current articles, by the way. And I was able to get as much information. So I'll go into this one, but basically, this talks about some of the things, with green transition and how across Africa, where hydrocarbon and mineral exports remain central to fiscal stability, these funds are now acquiring a strategic dimension, navigating the tensions between traditional energy and imperative and green transition investments. So this is some of the stuff that I'll share with the group. But basically, these are things that um, you can look at for yourself and see what the risks are and some of the benefits. But the best part of I like about it is it shows that Africa is a powerhouse, and it's showing exactly what I told you, which is the truth behind, I think, Africa by, and they predict like 2030, but I think it's even quicker than that because of the way technology is moving and the things I'm seeing, in the market. um, I'm gonna segue into, this is the crypto adoption rates in Africa right now, and this is probably a lot higher, I think, but you're more than welcome to do your own research. But growing interest in cryptocurrency does highlight Africa's unique position. But there's billions of people, right, in Africa, and the global financial landscape fostering economic innovation and financial inclusion. I think that's the bigger part that we all play a part in. So I think, being that America's got this, different mindset about crypto and the blockchain, don't think that that is the only thing that's happening within the actual technology itself. There's so much that can be done, and Africa can become a powerhouse. And I believe that the innovation that's going to come out of Africa, and it's coming out all the time, it's gonna supersede a lot of this stuff. America tends to brag a lot about, oh, we're doing this, and this is kind of what they do, is to set the example. But like, before, America still hasn't been around as long as Africa, right? And so there's still a lot more opportunity. And I think with this kind of, mindset of like sovereign wealth, taking the resources. So I look at, things like traditional investments, and how we look at the old financial system is like majority of the wealth still rely on traditional assets. But you think about it from sovereign wealth, it's like Africa, and how it has all those natural resources, and how you can tie in funding different projects, things like that. Or you can use the natural resources like the mining. They're using some of the different things with the mining and solar power. There's a bunch of different articles I'm going to get to. And this is the reason why I think it's showing like mass adoption has not even really taken off in Africa. I mean, it's still happening, but not on the scale that I think in the next couple of years, I think you're going to see an explosion, like double in the next year. And I'll tell you why. Because there's so much, a mass. I think with the fact that we just were talking earlier about BlackRock and some of these other companies like Fidelity, I was just noticing, like, PayPal, all these, Charles Schwab, you name it, they're all saying the same thing. They're all like, oh my goodness, we got to get on this, and jump on it, as well as, we're going to miss the train. So my point is, Africa is still kind of, I'd say Africa is still in a great place, because there's still so much room for investment, and it's not as overhyped as it is in the U.S. And there's still viable ways in which you can get kind of involved in it from the ground up. This is that's going to end the slides, but I'm going to still continue the discussion. But what I wanted to really get into is some of this other stuff, which is way more important. Some of the spotlight here on the Ethiopia's investment holdings. This one here is incredible. This talks about some of the things like the state-owned enterprises, Ethiopian Airlines. This is a sovereign wealth fund. So some of that stuff goes into deep about how you can invest in Africa and get involved in some of the sovereign wealth investment. Now look at this. I got this from here on Wikipedia, but I wanted to show you something. This is incredible. Look at look at China at the top, but then you go look at the US. It's
Sorry,
only
Kevin,
11.
your screen's not sharing at the moment.
Oh, okay, give me a second. I think I switched screens, and so it got me. There we go. Give me a second. I think this one is the one. So this is now you should be able to see my screen. Do you see it, everybody?
Yeah, we can see it now.
Okay, is it large enough? You can still see it, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this is what I was trying to point out. I went to Wikipedia and a list of sovereign wealth funds by the country, and I was just saying how up here in number one is China, right? But then you look here, the United States is just at 11, and that's the incredible thing. Then you look at some of these other countries, and you realize there's no mention. Only like Tanzania, there's and there's very few mention of Africa, but I think this is not correct, because with the amount of countries that are in Africa, but see China Development Fund, you see that? That's the most incredible part. So to me, that kind of contradicts. I think that Africa has a bigger stake because they've partnered up with China. But that's something that I thought was kind of that stood out to me. I was like, hold on. So I went a little deeper and I did my due diligence and research. So I looked at some of these other articles that we're talking about. This is some of the benefits of sovereign wealth funds in Africa. But look at this. These are already active. This has been since 2011. Not only that, you look at some of these other places, Egypt, but we don't hear about it. Angola.
Sorry,
So what my point?
your screen again, mate. Sorry.
I need to do my screen sharing. Yeah, I got my tabs. I got to jump between the tabs. Getting too excited. Give me a second. Thanks for pointing that out. I appreciate it. There we go. Now we're back, right?
Yeah.
Did it come up?
All good.
Okay. Yeah. So this is an article and it's talking about harnessing Africa's sovereign wealth funds for sustainable development. And when you go through this, it basically talks about, what I mentioned before, the role of sovereign wealth funds in Africa. But what's interesting is it gets into intergenerational savings by investing in current revenues. And it also talks about promoting equitable wealth distribution over time. This is what the key is for cryptocurrency. This is why it's such a sought out, open source technology. And then look at this, divested development. Now think about it from critical infrastructure and development projects, fostering economic diversification and reducing dependence on single revenue sources. Now, what I was mentioning here is look at Nigeria. It's been since 2011, yet you don't hear about anything. Look at that, Nigeria's excess revenues. And then they talk about also when you look at Angola, the same thing here goes for Egypt. So these are funds that are already active, that there is investment in things like, cryptocurrency. You could look at that as like, okay, so if I want to, actually invest in this fund, I would have something to back it up, so to speak. And then, there's innovation in African sovereign wealth. There's a lot of things that I found, like this fund in Egypt also is essential. But beyond that, I don't know, you might not can see that screen. Can you see it? You might have lost y'all. Can't see it. Give me a second. I have so many tabs open, so I got to jump between the tabs. Forgive me, folks. So this is an article that I wanted to point out. And the reason why I show you the articles, I think because a lot of people sometimes they're like surprised because they're like, Africa, and I'm like, yeah, Africa, you have a lot of potential. And I think we just hear about cryptocurrency, but I'm talking about something more important beyond just cryptocurrency. This is about the future of Africa, right? We're talking about investing in these wealth funds that are already active, so that you can become part of the future. Because I think this is where it's at. Like BlackRock and some of these other funds are basically, this is how they're able to, make money. And this is some of the stuff that we haven't heard. So did you see this? Can you see this?
Yep.
This okay. So this is chain analysis. I don't know if anybody is familiar. I'm pretty sure most folks are. But this is the Bitcoin strategic reserves, right, behind the changing architecture of foreign of this Bitcoin. What we were talking about, of sovereign finance. But basically, it gets into some of the stuff with sovereign wealth funds as part of it. And I'll put this together for you, this group, so everybody can have the time to go through it. But I don't want to just go through slide after slide. I want to give you actual proof of what's happening in Africa and how it's happening around the world with these wealth funds. And I think wealth funds are going to become, what I'm going to be honest about, it's almost like the best way for you to invest in something without having to think about, hey, how can I become part of something that's larger when Africa is already doing it? They've been doing it. So did you see this one? This Bitcoin mining takes off in Africa, powered by green energy. You see this article? Can everybody see it?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. So this is, again, going back to the what I was talking about that kind of started me on this journey, because I saw that there was a lot of Bitcoin mining that, since China had to pivot and they banned Bitcoin mining and said because of the energy consumption, Africa became kind of the default. I think, maybe even, to be honest with you, I think it's the new emerging landscape for sustainable Bitcoin mining, because I think all the benefits are outweighing the risk and the negative side, because a lot of this is built. It's China crypto mining ban basically drove all these folks to come to Africa. And what happened was, a lot of this, Africa leads, Ethiopia leads Africa into the rush into Bitcoin mining, and then this is all the things, like most of Uganda's Bitcoin mining is small scale, but it's growing. It's cheaper power, strong currency are attracting Bitcoin miners to Zambia. This is where I was trying to tie back into the sovereign wealth aspect, because if you think about it, if these countries can start to build these funds and start to, like a state funded investment, and say, hey, we want to bring in a certain amount of crypto mining or crypto to build up our cryptocurrency liquidity. Like, we want to come to an understanding of how we can benefit from this. And I think that's what I'm trying to say, and I'm trying to leverage, is that we have an opportunity that is unlike any opportunity that we've seen before. And I think that's what's important, everybody, is not to forget that, even though you hear about the hype and this coin and that coin and everybody's investing, don't think that you missed out on any of this, because there's so much to still that can manifest. And I think what I'm saying is, like, even here, this is a national park, and it talks about in the DRC, they built a Bitcoin mining, and I think the electricity offsets from what they make off of the Bitcoin mining. It helps to electricity in the rural population. It helps for them to build out their infrastructure and to help with the electricity costs. It offsets it. So this is a very interesting time period that we're in. This is why I'm super excited to talk about this stuff. It's not just about what's happening right now. I always tell people, think about what it's going to look like 5 to 10 years from now, and that's the beauty of it, because it's still just it's still evolving, and there's a lot of different things happening. And with that being said, I'm gonna ask, did anybody have any questions, or did you have any comments, or do you want to keep going? Because I have more things that I can kind of talk about, and I don't mind.
I think this is really interesting, actually. I'll open it for the audience, but I did, when I was in Singapore, I worked with a sovereign wealth fund over there. I saw that you had them listed. They're doing a ton of investment in Africa. And then I think that the China part, I'm interested in your thought, but to me, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because on one side, now Africa's got a lot more options for investment. Before, it used to just be like Western loans, right? But on the other side of it, China is also like if you heard like Sri Lanka, different things, if people like default on the loan, they just take all the they take everything they invested in and they take control of it. So I'm curious what you think about, the whole China investment, sovereign wealth investment side. And also, Erica in the comments is asking about opportunities to invest in Africa. Is there anything, again, this is not financial advice, but do you have any response to her as to good ways to, if she wants to, invest into Africa, into this space?
Yeah, that's something that I think, I would look at more of the actual like well established funds that are like in my mind, like the Ethiopia, Bitcoin mining, something in that nature that you already know that's established. I think any of these projects that are just kind of you gotta do your research, and you gotta know what you're investing in. Did you have a did you have something you wanted to add?
Erica, did you have a follow-up question on that?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. I know that you got to do research, but with this presentation, do you have, say, a roadmap, someone that's like, I've been really looking for ways to invest. I thought about going to Africa. It's like, no, I don't want to do that because I don't really know anyone. I kind of like the idea of being able to invest through brokerages because that's what I'm kind of accustomed to here in the United States. And so, are there brokerages that are set up that would allow people to participate, in what's going on in Africa with these types of funds? Maybe you have an idea of, I mean, are you doing it? How are you doing? How are you doing it? I'm going to do my research, but any thoughts there?
I would say start out with, a lot of times what I was going to mention too is there's a lot of these conferences and events around financial, like there is here, right? Like a lot of these ones that are not just cryptocurrency or blockchain, they're just traditional finance conferences. I mean, there's so many that I could go down a list, but they happen. And they're happening regularly in Africa. And so I would say start there because you're going to meet more people who are, I would say established in the financial, in the financial industry. Whereas if you go, I agree with you. Like, how are you going to go and just invest in something that, you got to kind of figure out the reputation of the company, how long they've been around, who are the folks that are running the company. It's just like any other company. But I would say there's a lot of financial events, and everything in the US is all done through like these huge
And it's
conferences, right?
regulated. Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
regulated.
and it's
Um,
regulated.
right,
Yeah.
it's regulated. And just like, okay, so for myself, let's say if someone was interested in learning how to trade futures, for instance. I'm just going to throw that out there. I could tell them exactly what they needed to do. Oh, you need to open up a brokerage account. You need to fund it. Here's some training that you can do, or these are the different futures that you can invest in. This is when the market is open. This is when the market is doing a maintenance period from 5 to 6 p.m. A roadmap for what's being presented would be very, very powerful, a powerful add-on for people that are interested in investing, because there's so many people here in America that are interested in investing in Africa. I believe strongly that Africa is the future. So many people have been flocking there for years, and we're just now finding out, the Black community, just now finding out, about the wealth of resources that are there in Africa. And I'm seeing tons and tons of videos, and so many foreign countries just robbing the country blind. And, to be able to go in as an investor and to be able to tap in to the resources, would just be very, very powerful. There's so much information out there, but I believe that having, like a good roadmap to say, this is what you need to do, These are some companies or some brokerages that are set up. Here's what the returns have been for the past 3 or 5 years. Case in point with China. China has integrated with the China Sovereignty Fund. That's appealing to me because I know how China has integrated themselves into the into these African countries to be able to build their infrastructure, and like you said, if they default on the loan, they take over. Okay. In a way, to me, that's appealing because China is in Africa to stay. They're not going anywhere. And I think because of how they've strategically positioned themselves, it makes their fund, attractive to me as an investor. Now the question becomes, okay, now how do I actually invest into this fund? Hello.
That's awesome that you mentioned that. I think, yeah, I mean, my point is, I think now, to be real honest with you, I've been to Ethiopia and I've been to, Senegal and to Morocco, and so I think you're gonna have, there's an Africa Bank Forum, and it's every year, but I'm not sure. Most folks you have to go. You have to go, and you have to build a community and build alliances. But you do have to. I think starting out at like a conference that's well known, that people gather from all over the world. And there's tons of them. I can share that with the group. But my main point is look around your area and just see, if you're interested in a particular region, because the continent of Africa is vast, right? So, but there's funds out there, and like before, I think what I'm saying is I don't see any restriction of you just getting on a plane and going over there and finding, a way to communicate with people who are interested in what you're. I usually go to crypto conferences, and so a lot of them, and blockchain, they have them in Africa all over. So I'm sure people here have been and attended, and they have Binance is pretty well known in Africa, and so is some of these other crypto companies. So don't be afraid to go to Africa and invite yourself there, because I just went and I meet people and they're talking to me because we're a global this diaspora is it's up to us to open up that door. But I agree with you, like, how do you start, right? But I think having that we got a lot more than we used to be, right? Back in the day, you just have to get on a plane and then wing it. Now you can reach out to people ahead of time or go to conferences and even build community that way, and then say, hey, I'm coming over, I'm going to do a trip, I'm bringing over some folks that we're interested in investing in Africa, can you set? And I think what I'm saying is the consulate and things like that, the embassies, those are the ones that I would start with first, and then look at, because it's legit, right? Those are legit, versus you just going over there and saying, like you said, you just walking up to somebody. It's just like in the States, you got to do your due diligence and figure out. But I do think that you're right. China, how did they go over? They just went over there and they have a great relationship with Africa. And they started to talk about what we want to do. And I think that's where we have to be unafraid. We have to be unafraid and go over there to Africa and just walk in. I'm going to be honest. I felt at home. I had no issues. People treated me with love and respect like I've never seen in my life. So I'm speaking highly. And I stayed there for about 2 weeks, and I was in Senegal, which is, it has its ups and downs, and as every country, and even prior, when Ethiopia, and now it's a little harder, it's a little bit difficult. But these things are happening in real time. I did see the Chinese and the things that you're talking about, the investment, like they've got Chinese restaurants, and things like that. So there's no reason that I feel like you should feel the barrier. I think it's the crypto conferences are good, but I would go for more of if you're trying to do the traditional investment, and this is not financial advice, it's just me telling you, if you're trying to do that, you need to up it to like the Africa Bank Forum, like there's a lot of these. If you just look, there's a whole bunch of list of conferences that are like more state and nation focused, and there'll be these ones where it's crypto and blockchain and some of these other offshoots, like there'll be more like a meetup like this. But if you want traditional finance and you want to look at that, those are where you're going to find the people who are going to ask you questions and answer those questions for you, and see where they you know, you and they can kind of come up, because they're not gonna just tell you, hey, here, give me some money. They're going to have a roadmap. They're going to have regulatory aspects. They're going to tell you the risk, however your investment's going to work, and you can vet them, and you can walk into their office and see the other people who have invested, and that kind of thing. But again, nothing's guaranteed. You just gotta, I think, go to Africa. And I don't know if you've been, but I don't know where you are now. But my point is, I would just say that's where I would first start my you know, my kind of, I would just start right there. Just go to Africa. You're gonna meet people, and you're gonna see how things work. It's a different system, right? But for me, it worked out. I just was able to connect with the right folks. I'm just a super networker, I guess.
And
But did
Eric,
you have?
I'll add on to that real quick, which is that I think you want to select your country. It's like somebody saying, hey, come to America. It's different if you go to, New York versus if you go to, Orlando, Florida versus if you go to Huntsville, right? So, you got to pick where you're going to go. Ghana, obviously a lot of folks are going to Ghana. That's real welcome and real open. South Africa, I've been to Cape Town, beautiful down there. You got to kind of pick your location. Some places are probably fine as a solo traveler. And some places maybe not. So you want to select where you're going to go.
Right. Okay. Thank you all.
Well said, because I'm I'm gonna be honest. I'm like a global citizen. I'll just jump on a plane and go somewhere. But he's right. You definitely gotta select where you're gonna go. And I think being that said, that's a good point. I mean, Africa is definitely different and different. In Ghana, I know there's a lot of people from the U.S. actually that are repatriating, that are moving there. So it may be, yeah, in your best interest. But I'll try to put together a list. That's a very good question. I think, where do we start? Because that may tie in. Maybe a few of us will go together, right? And we'll have
Yeah, I was
community.
thinking you guys got to set something up for this meetup.
There you go. We're ready. But yeah, I appreciate the question. Anybody else have any questions? I wanted to share. I'm sharing my.
Did you have a question? Did you want to ask that one? I think she was asking in the comments here. Let me see what it was. I think she was asking about, let's see where it is here. Sorry, I'm going to scroll back up. If it's listed on a country stock market, pretty much any brokers. I think she was asking about, like, I guess being able to do, still was it local stock market or, in local countries in Africa? Is that what you were asking about? If she's on, not sure if she's there. Let me see if she's there. Okay, she's commenting. Said no, very true. Okay. Yeah, so I would say I'm not sure if that's what she's asking, but there was a question about, because you can obviously get like some blockchain related investments and things like that on the US stock market. And I think she was talking about doing it in local country markets. I was saying there is some risk in that because they're not all liquid, they're not all as transparent as the US. I don't know if you have thoughts about that though.
That's a great point. I think, yeah, like, because there's so many different ways in which I notice, like, even tracking your crypto. You go to one exchange and it's different, and then that's the volatility, right? Then you go to another one and it's like it's the price fluctuation. So, like you said, in real time, I don't think there's anything like a Wall Street, like a NASDAQ kind of dashboard where you can see, like, the global market is so it changes, based on kind of like certain conditions, as you know. I don't know anything that's for if we're talking about specific cryptocurrency, that's when you got to think about if you're going to go with like a major exchange that's well established, or something that you maybe are taking a risk. Because I know regions even in Asia, and I know that most people, like, there's KuCoin, there's some that you can only get in that region. You know what I'm saying? In Africa, there's certain exchanges that are only available to Africa, so the regulatory aspect is kind of like that. But I think you got a good point. Is like, how can you, like, a universal dashboard that shows you kind of everything around the world of different kind of like exchanges that are showing, because there is that whole thing with the Chinese, right? The Asia market is its own thing, and there's like the Alibaba, and then then you come here, and then you got the Tesla and all these others and Amazon that dominate, and Meta. But then those are global. So I think with that being said, I mean, you kind of have to pick and choose like what exchange you're going to be your source of truth, and kind of be careful because you could be misled. But for me, I would caution against investments that you are, you got to know kind of how you want to invest and what your risk tolerance is. And this again, this is not me. This is me talking. This is not financial advice. But I did want to show everybody one thing about that was pretty amazing. And I think, can you see this one with Ethiopia?
Yes.
Yeah, this one is really what I was trying to explain, is that with a lot of the things about mining capacity and translates. So you think about how this has helped Ethiopia, right, in terms of their gross domestic product, and this is it's kind of a interesting thing that I look at for sustainability. There's also, but when you go back and you research the companies, like these people, who is that? And so you kind of think about what you were just telling me. That's the relationship, and this is basically what's happening. And you get all these different players, but none of them are that I know of are from Africa, American or Africa in general. I mean, this is something that's going to continue to happen, right? And unless we are investing in ourselves, we're going to suffer, because the future. That's why I said the sovereign wealth thing is kind of untapped, and you have to kind of look at what you want to invest in. But I'd say it's going to come back to these types of Bitcoin mining operations, which there's a ton of, by the way, and the Chinese are heavily invested in it. There's still room for other folks like us to get involved in it, but like you said, you got to go over and you got to meet people and kind of figure out how you want to, what their offering is like, or you could create your own. I feel like if you're in Africa already, the landscape better than anybody else. Why not come up and say, hey, because to set up a Bitcoin mining operation, to me, is the best way to kind of jump in, and then you can kind of get inclusivity. That's why I said the floodgates are kind of open, because we still have not, and this is from November of last year. So there's a lot of articles like that out there that are kind of challenging us, I think, as a people to think about how can we take the power back, how can we bring this wealth into our community. Because this is the thing. This again goes back to someone said, hey, I want to invest in Bitcoin mining, and then someone said, oh, well, let's talk to these countries in Africa and let's see which one can kind of open up the that discussion. And I think Ethiopia, there's some other different ones that I've seen, and this is just the beginning, folks. And my whole point is, this is generating this much money. This is helping Ethiopia, and my mind is, this is just one country. If all of Africa was able to tap into that, do you think about how much the US wouldn't even be able to compete in that arena, because look how big the continent Africa is. And so that was mainly my point with the sovereign wealth, is that there's so much in Africa that it's underdeveloped, because there's so much going on that we need to kind of like really think about opportunity, because there's opportunity there. It's just like you said, pick your country, pick the thing that you're most interested about. And this is just one topic I'm talking about sovereign wealth that I'm touching on, that is important, that I feel like that's my focus, is constant education and opening my eyes and other people around me, so that we can all say, hey, this sounds like a viable investment. How can we get involved? And I think that's that growth mindset that I'm talking about. Did you have any more questions, anyone, or do I want to continue?
I was going to comment on that Bitcoin mining, and we are over. So anybody who wants to drop, feel free. We're going to stick around and answer questions also. So we'll keep going for a little while. I was going to
Okay.
comment on that Bitcoin mining that you said, Kevin, that I think that is a great way to get in, because if you think about it, the Bitcoin mining, I mean, that is what controls a network, right? So the people who are mining, if you have, let's say, a third or a quarter or even 20% of Bitcoin mining capacity, even 10% is in Africa, that means Africa, for the first time in modern times, has control over a significant amount of the financial system, right? Because it's being mined in Ethiopia, in Nigeria, in South Africa, wherever it is, right? That Bitcoin mining, and anybody can do it, right? Anybody can set it up. You do a small operation, a large operation, do it on a personal, little machine, whatever you're doing. Every single time you start doing that mining, that's really, you're also protecting the Bitcoin network and making sure it's free for everybody, right?
Exactly. And I think, yeah, and this is again, going back to who gave him permission. Nobody. They just said, hey, you know what? We see a use case. We want to bring in this to, and China banned the whole thing with Bitcoin mining because of the energy consumption. But there's a way that Ethiopia figured out, let's use solar power. Actually, you know what's interesting about, and I didn't really get deep into it, they're using the river. They're using hydroelectric. It's not it's not in China. It was just straight up. They were just using the electricity, and it was overwhelming the grid. It was doing all this things like the offset. I think it was causing a lot of environmental issues. So that's the reason there was a lot of that. But with Africa, you got so much vast area of land, and you think about each country could have its own Bitcoin mining operation. That in itself would create this vision that I have for Africa to be able to have its own. And then you have all this reinvestment back into Africa, right? Then you'd have more or less these investments where you could say, hey, how does the infrastructure get built? This is the name of the game. We have to take the power back. We have to think about ways. Don't think about, oh, well, I'm up against the wall. This regulatory thing is holding me back. This is about you looking at what your resources are and then taking control of your destiny, of your future. Because when I went to Africa, I saw how much vast land there were. They say people in China is so crowded that they're trying to get out because they want to come to a place. I think I was reading an article and the lady was saying, when they got there, she couldn't believe how much vast land there was, like safaris and it's nature all around you, and how spread out it was. Yeah, it's a lot of people in Africa, but Africa's a huge continent. In China, it's dense and everybody's competing so for land resources, and so they're building up. In Africa, you can just keep it, the thought is what I'm saying. And I think the mindset is what I'm trying to change, is that each of us here has a capability. If you want to do blockchain engineering, you want to do blockchain, like I was talking about, building a mining system. Nothing's stopping you. You just go get a mining rig, you set it up, you get going, you get some folks that are knowledgeable about how to set. It's like setting up a data center. But this is going to become the topic. And I'm telling you, in 5 years, I feel like Africa, this is the playbook. And I think it's going to be replicated from Ethiopia to other countries, because they're going to say, hey, you know what? This country is doing quite well off of this. And it's not just Bitcoin. We're also talking about the other cryptocurrencies too, because that's the thing. That's what's driving it. It's like it's Bitcoin is also just one of the 5,000 cryptocurrencies out there. And like you were saying before with Tether and all these other, once you start realizing that, you're like, oh, you can even mine Tether. I mean, there's nothing stopping you. So that's mainly where I'm at with my talk about sovereign wealth.
Hand raised here from Isaac, Kevin.
Okay. Hey, Isaac.
Hey, thanks for that. Was very, very, very informative. And I think it's a lot of things that probably are on a lot of people's minds. As much as you say, getting into mining is very easy to get, it's very accessible. A lot of people are in their infancy on crypto, let alone the blockchain journey. And it's a case of how are we going to help other people on board into this? There's still a lot of people that are unbanked, let alone thinking about setting up or being involved in mining. Is it also a conversation that we need to have around, do we need to be more collaborative in our approach on how we're going to create these opportunities for generational wealth? Do we need to find partners within on the African continent that we can work with to help allow people who don't necessarily have the technical expertise or have the time, but maybe have the financials or maybe have other areas that they can put into it to allow us to be able to grow. So say if there is a 5-year project that we say we can work on together, how can we start putting that roadmap together? Or have you started something similar? Or what other areas can people tap into? Because there's a lot of people here who are incredibly interested and been engaged for the last 2+ hours, and they're dedicated to attend these sessions every month, that want to know what are the next steps, or how can we start taking next steps together to make changes in our own life and for our future.
Yeah, yeah. I think the basic, this is a thing, right? I think with cryptocurrency and blockchain, let's set it straight. We're talking about differences in technology, understanding the terminology first, educating yourself, understanding that the blockchain is basically the infrastructure side of it, right? So I think that's the bigger part. Like as far as depends on what you want to do. I mean, if you're looking at blockchain mining, and if you want to get into that, then that's a whole different. I come from a technology background, so it's a little bit different. It's just, it's going to come from me just understanding, like, computers, right? And nodes and things like that. So what I'm saying is, if you're trying to go down that path, there are a lot of there's a lot of free resources. I mean, to be honest with you. Now, as far as the financial side of it, if you have a business plan, I mean, if you're trying to set up a Bitcoin mining, if we all came here together and said, hey, we want to set one up, that's something that needs to be, you need a roadmap, you need a business plan, you need to understand what it's going to take, and then where you're going to set it up at, and kind of invest in that capacity. But as far as when you talk about people are unbanked, true. But I think right now is, the time to learn as much as you can about the way the market is and the fluctuations. Like, I think earlier we were talking about futures and some of that other stuff, like how to invest. Those are the key things too. And I mean, I'm still going to be honest, I'm learning as much as everybody else. I think there's a lot of opportunity, but I think when it comes down to investing, and this is not financial advice, it's just me saying this, you kind of got to figure out how can I make this, because I think without a doubt it's going to cost something, right? So how can I make an investment, either with the mindset of a collective, or if I want to do it as an individual, because I don't know everybody's economic situation. So, again, going back to what we were saying earlier, there's just different avenues. I mean, I would say, if you were thinking about doing something in the infrastructure side, looking at blockchain engineering, there's tons of free resources. There's tons of ways to learn it. And that could kind of set you up for understanding at least the code and how to implement your own blockchain. There also are there's funds that are set up. Each blockchain, if you go to like different blockchains, and I'm going to be honest, they all have a fund that they set up, and they'll basically say, build on our chain. Costs nothing to build on their chain. That means that you just got to the learning curve is, you got to learn how to develop on their blockchain, build on their chain, and they'll give you a certain amount of money, like a grant. That could be a segue for some folks. I've seen people leverage that to help get a project up, maybe, and then that'll help build some ways to deal with the economic side of it. But as far as you asking me about the unbanked and people, I mean, mass adoption is the hardest part for anything. And I think there's got to be a way to get everybody under the same kind of like umbrella, so to speak, of the thought around, like, if you're talking about the diaspora, that's the biggest part that I'm looking at. Like, how can we get everybody that's in Africa, and in Africa, when I say the diaspora, I'm talking all over the world, under, let's just say we had one platform, right? And that was the platform for us to invest in these kind of projects, because that's how it all kind of starts. It's almost like you invest in something that kind of grows, but that's a hard one, because you got risk and you got volatility, in the market, things like that. Cryptocurrency, I've been in it for over 10 years, and it's always fluctuated. And I think it's never going to be, something that you just have to do a lot of research and understand the market and the trends and the things that are happening. But I'm really just tying it back into, if you're really looking at going to some of these cryptocurrency, I don't know if anybody in here goes to any of these. There's probably conferences happening around you, but you might have to, it's like a meetup kind of, it'll be about the size of this group, but it'll be literally there was a lot of these virtual, and you can just jump in and kind of talk about some of this stuff, and you'll find other like-minded people around you that are kind of next, that might be next door that you don't know, who are interested in this kind of thing. I host a lot of events, to be honest, so I draw a lot of like-minded folks. But you're right, people are unbanked. There's lack of resources, but that's kind of where I would start. I don't think you could just from the bottom up without any money just come in and say, hey, I want to set up a Bitcoin mining operation. But if you did have a business plan and you came to me and a group of folks and you said, hey, I live in Sierra Leone, I want you to invest in this Bitcoin mining operation, and we could build that kind of community where I'm like, okay, I'm open. Like that's kind of how I would approach it, because with a business plan, you can kind of see their roadmap, and then we can all say, hey, is this a viable investment? Or what kind of resources do we need to even get this up and running? Does that make sense?
Okay.
That's really good. That's very useful. Thanks for that, Kevin.
I want to make a comment on that as well, Kevin. That you were talking about kind of, do we have like one umbrella where everybody kind of, jointly investing? I think that there's some pros and cons on that. And I'm just saying like a global Africa perspective. If you look at our history, every time we kind of have everything like under one person or one thing, usually what happens is some outside force comes in and destroys that thing, right? So to me, I actually like things being decentralized where we have a lot of different, people, organizations who are doing different things, because it means that you don't have just like one point of failure, which is why Bitcoin is still around, right? So for me, I'm very cautious about like, hey, we all have this one group that's going to do every, diaspora African project there is, because the next thing that's going to happen is something's going to happen to that group, right? Like we don't know what happened to them. So for me, I actually like it being distributed, where it's not just everything's under one person, everything's under one group, but that's just my take.
No, that's a good point. I agree with that. Yeah, that's the what I really wanted to say. I guess I was thinking more on the mindset. Like we all share the same common goal, but yet you're right. You can't have single point of failure, right? Because as we know, people, there's greed, there's other things that come into play, and that usually the corruption is what destroys it, and that's the bigger part of it, because like you said, it's a single point of failure. But yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Anybody else have a comment or question?
Other comments, questions, thoughts? It's been very eye-opening. Really enjoyed getting this perspective on it, Kevin. Other thoughts people would like? Erica, do you have anything else you want to, or Danielle, or anybody else?
I just Googled the cost to set up a small scale Bitcoin mining operation in Ethiopia. And it says the cost is between $30,000 and $200,000. So the numbers look very promising. Just wanted to share that. But great group. I haven't joined in a while, but I'm glad I did.
Yeah, I think it's to be honest with you, those numbers have come down, because now you've got a lot of these mining operations that are up and running, and there'll be a lot more opportunities for you to find cheaper ways to do it, because they had to take the hit. They had to fix all these problems in the beginning. You can go to them and say, hey, hire somebody that has set their operation up, pay them a consulting fee, help you get your operation up and running, and then you kind of eliminate that. Yeah, you'll say, hey, I'll pay you this 10,000 for this consulting fee for you just to come in, and I think what I'm seeing now with a lot of these rigs, because of ways in which now it's cheaper to get some of this equipment, the ASICs and some of these other different types of mining rigs. I bring that up because there's a lot of networks now that are built on like there's one called the Helium Network. I don't know how familiar people are with that one, but they basically you can get one of their mining rigs, I think, and this is for people in the US, and they might ship internationally. I'm not yet sure, but they basically it's basically like their version of internet, and I think they'll piggyback off of what your internet is basically your internet ISP, but then internet service provider, and then you'll basically, they'll mine their coin and you get like a percentage of that and this just for using some of your, I think it's like, you know, some of your, look at it, you almost look at it like the same thing with, I don't know if people under like torrents and stuff like that. It's kind of like the same thing because we're all on this network and we're all sharing these resources, but it's like you use some of the power in which they drive the network and the hash rate, and that's the kind of thing. But I'll tell you, they did that a while back, and I think that was successful because the Helium network, it's called the Helium Mobile Hotspot. That's what it's called. I'm gonna share that. And you basically, that's how they were build their this network. And again, it goes back to that whole thing about what you talk about, DeFi, you know, decentralized and stuff like that. This is what I was talking about. And they had these mining rigs. See, $50 million coverage grant. So there's money out there, folks, and you just kind of got to look around. But you know, I've been doing this for so long, so I used to. And so these are the hotspots. They'll give you, from what I understand, I remember they give you the hotspot for free because they're using your network, and it's the way that they have it set up. You know, you got to do your due diligence and research it on your own, but it's just helium.com. And they talk about, so it's like a hotspot. Think about it. If you were in Africa or in any other region of the world and you just don't have internet. So hotspot sets your internet free. So that's what I will tell people. There are things like this out there, but you won't hear about it, right? They're competing with T-Mobile and AT&T and all these big companies. They don't want you to know, but there are things like this. But this is the real reality of what I see. Like something like this could be huge in Africa. But look how big that grant was. I don't know about you, but that looks good to me. That could get us up there, right? So this is the kind of stuff that I'm saying is available, but it's also like you got to research and figure, like you don't hear about it from just, you know, everybody. And that's one of the downsides. I think when you put the right people together in the right conversations, things start to happen, right? It's like, I know Chinese went to Africa, they figured it out, they got involved in some of these discussions, they started talking about what's the initial investment going to look like, and then they built out their roadmap, and then they execute. Because one thing about it is, when I've been to China too, by the way, they execute. When they come up with something, it's like roadmap, 6 months, we're done. We might even be done in 5 months. But that's what we need to do. And I'm driving that myself, is get more involved in the doing part and the execution, and making sure we all understand what's going on. Everybody's in this together. It's a win-win, and everybody collectively can succeed, because it's not about just myself. And I think that's what attracted me to cryptocurrency in general, and Bitcoin, because of how that's it's not owned by anybody. It's all of us together, and that's the beauty of it. And we can make this a success. It's just a matter of a good business plan, and then the right folks, you know, and being able to be aligned on your vision. And that's why Africa's untapped, you know. That's just my opinion, you know. Did anybody?
I think that pretty much every group around the world knows that Africa is about the biggest opportunity out there right now.
Yes.
Everybody is trying to get there, and you know, I really hope awareness increases. That's what we're trying to do here among, you know, global African diaspora, African American, all of us, because this is our inheritance, really. I mean, this is our history, where other people are going and they're like, oh, we're gonna look into Africa. This is where we come from. I know there's a bunch of arguments about where we come from, where we don't. But, you know, I'm not going to worry about that. But this is our inheritance. So when we're watching other people just go and take all these opportunities, we should be a part of that. We should be the biggest part of that, in my opinion.
Exactly. And I want to put this article in our chat, but this is something that's talking about, and I didn't really want to get into the Web3 discussion that deep, because this is sovereign wealth. But I have to talk about Web3, right? So you think about it, and this is some of the startups that are coming with Web3 out of Kenya. There's more than this, right? But this is just some of these, I would say, publications, see, that you can stay up on and you can read about this stuff. Because what I hate to do is talk a bunch of stuff, that people are saying, maybe they'll come back and say, well, is that really true? Did he make it up? Where's the facts that back it up? These are articles that you can research yourself. You don't have to take my word for it. You can come, and then you can come back to me and say, Kevin, you were right. You're right. This opportunity is right there before us, but we just have to, we have to get aligned and figure out the vision. But I do agree. You do have to have a roadmap. You do have to have the right team. Me, myself, I believe that the diaspora, we're all just one, big family, and we just need to, we speak in different languages, we have different customs, sure, but the deeper roots of it is in Africa, and that's how I envision our, kind of like, my mindset is like, I'm speaking to, the same, we're speaking the same language, but we might have a different way of expressing it. And I think the mass adoption part, getting everybody on the same page, understanding, if you go and look at how things are done in other countries, they're making it happen because the people are invested, right? You got to believe it in order for it to manifest. And I think with cryptocurrency, and now with Web3, they're talking about the blockchain technology, how it's disrupting, and it is, folks. It's disrupting. I see it. I'm in Silicon Valley every day. There's a new startup, Web3 blockchain, and it's incredible. The innovation that's happening and how fast it's happening. That's what's really the more important part. So I'm going to leave this here for you, so you can, and sign up for some of these, sign up for on some of these, forums, so you can get involved in some of this stuff. And like you were saying, and this is something that you can take time on to research for yourself before you make that giant leap into investment. But you're right. Again, it goes back to, no one person should control something, because that can be a detriment for everybody. And we've seen that in the past, where things that it looks like they're gonna benefit everybody, and then all of a sudden, you're left standing, and someone else is a lot of fraud and corruption. So you do have to be careful.
Yep.
But that being said, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say, if you can share all your links in the you're in the Telegram group, right?
Yeah, I'll put them there. No problem.
Share them all there. That way, everybody will have them after this, and they can check it out and follow up everything.
Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. That's pretty much that's my discussion, and I'd like to come back at any time, and we can do another session on something different. But I wanted to talk about Africa because it's so important for me. I think there's a lot of missed opportunities, and I think that it's sad that all in the news, and I tell people this: look at BBC News, look at all the different news outlets, and I'm going to be honest with you, they all report differently. And I've seen things that'll show up on my feeds and things like that. I'm like, hold on, that's happening in Africa. But then American news, you don't hear anything about it because that's not pertaining to America, right? And the world, but you'll hear about something in China, but Africa's omitted. But there's a lot of innovation and things happening in Africa every day that are mind blowing, that you would just be out, it would blow your mind, and you would be like, what, that happened? But I think with the Web3 and technology that's coming out, we're gonna see a true a giant leap in the next 5 years. It's going to be unseen like anything we've ever seen before. So I would say learn as much Web3 and blockchain technology related stuff as you can, and apply that to what we can do to help Africa, because that's going to be that. I'm telling you, that's going to be the biggest thing that you can do. Because if China's over there right now, they're not over there just because they're over there. They know the potential. They want to get there first. And they're rooted. They're not going to go away anytime soon. They're trying to build out that infrastructure for their.
There's another hand up. Do you have time for another question?
Yeah, I have plenty of time.
All right, Dr. Wilton McDonald, did you want to ask a question? You're on mute. Nope, still on mute. Dr. Wilton?
Yeah, hi there. Hi, everyone. Thanks
Hello.
again. Yes, hi there. Hi there. Yes, I was just putting some comments there in the chat about Iberia. So good to join, and I got the invite through a SEPA, through the NTech group and a SEPA. So yeah, just letting you know. I mean, I've built up the Ethereum. It's good to know Ethereum is growing, and we are at Iberia Gold at about 420 billion in in-ground assets. And we have external reports from Houlihan. So that's good to know where we're trending. And I see that the markets, being a hedge fund lawyer for 30 years, I see that people are going the tokenized route to real assets. That's good to know. But stable coins, the kind of jury is out, because it is a way that I can understand the tie to USD and trying to stabilize US bonds and notes. So right now, our space is currently being regulated. Tokenized funds are being regulated in Cayman, where we are domiciled, the Cayman Islands. But I see that this would be the future to go on in a kind of real world asset. What is really disturbing to me is that we have trillions of dollars that's in Africa, yet Africa as a continent remains the poorest continent, which is really sad, because a lot of those kingdoms and tribes and interacting with a lot of the folk there in Oceania, they can't access the banking system. So I'm hoping to change some of that, with introducing Iberia. And I'm invited to speak in Nigeria, going there next month, and then maybe Togo and Burkina Faso. So it's and it's sad to see what's happening in Ghana. There are allegations about corruption and what's happening there. But Zambia, in touch with some of the folks there. I like what you said. I like what you're doing. I just think that there should be a little bit more support for the RWAs and stuff that we are working on, and connecting with actual banking and financing houses, even hedge funds. When people speak about Africa, even in my world, they throw their hands up, and then they're saying, "Oh no, we can't deal with Africa; it's too much risk." So we need to change and shape, those perceptions about, because there are the Black Rocks and the big guys. They do deal with Africa, the countries. They do. That's how Europe makes its money. France takes out 1 trillion every year in terms of their ill-gotten gains. 1 trillion, one nation. And I live in Poland. My wife is Polish. I do see how businesses thrive because the governments extract what they can from Africa, and then they provide sub-assemblies, stations, products, finished products, and some of those products get sent back to Africa as finished products. So it's like we have to change that narrative. And part of the work I'm doing, apart from Iberia, it's on the timeline, our history. And for those who understand my work a bit, I'm a McDonald. As mine say, I'm Dr. Wilton McDonald. And finding my roots, like that program, Roots, you'd find that most of the people in the West, they are not directly African. I know it may sound controversial, but I've been doing research on my third PhD for 5 years, and I'm seeing that we have a lot to explore. So when we return to Africa from the West, we should return king to king, returning that way. We meet our brothers. Africa remains home base. I too am dear. In fact, that's the best place. Kenya and Uganda visited about 2-3 years ago. I love and I find peace in visiting Africa. Madagascar, we visited as a family. It's one of the best places. My wife, of 120 countries, that's the best place that she's visited in Kenya. She still just loves the place. We consider as home base, but in the West and in Europe, we need to change that perception, thinking that we're just only of one stock. We're just African. We're all ultimately African, but the planet, as my research shows, 200 years ago, the whole planet was Black. And we have to think about how that changed. The question is, how did it change? And why did it change? And how come today the 57 million millionaires and 3,000 billionaires, only 1% is Black. For me, that is really evil. I can't even describe and find words, and I have so many degrees. I can't find words to describe what kind of thing. And I've been in the hedge funds finance world for 30 years as a CPA, accountant, and lawyer in 8 countries, doing my 3rd PhD. All the universities gone and attended. I can't understand how 57 million millionaires, and most of them sit in Europe. They live very comfortable lives, but the governments have their hands in Africa's pocket. They extract wealth on the cheap. They keep Africa as a continent poor, and they sell us this narrative and lie that we're all labeled as one people, as a homogenous people. Like I said, I am a Black Jacobite Scotsman, and the Scottish clans are selling out. If you look at Armadale Castle and the Scottish so-called McDonald's, they're giving it up. That's happening in real time. We have to appreciate the history to better appreciate, understand, accept the economics. So I love this group. I love hearing what you have to say. But as we look at this digital space, and it's going to become more regulated, we have to look at the real world assets and how we could empower Africa as home base, how we could empower Africa and finance some of those treasures that are still, on African soil. And of course, renegotiate some of those terrible agreements which apply, because they, quite frankly, keep Africa down, away from the capital markets for the most part. Only some groups are allowed to deal with Africa openly, and to renegotiate the trade agreements, which are horrible. Like I said, France takes 1 trillion from Africa every year. That is obscene money and wealth, and it has to stop. We have to look at ways in which we better, and 1% of considered rich people, millionaires and billionaires, that's not a prize we want to accept. 1% of 57 million millionaires, 1% of 3,000 billionaires. That's horrible. It's evil. It's sheer evil. And as I said in my comments before, the US has a credit card limit, 55 trillion. Once the cash burn is 4 trillion a year, once that's reached, it's going to be game over. At some point, you can't afford your interest payments. And we are living in this. What will accelerate the change is this, some of this history that I'm talking about, because we're sold the bill of goods that we're all one people, we're all African. And then when you look at the continent of Africa, not everyone can deal with Africa. In other words, if everyone that's Black wanted to come back to Africa, we can't, because what will you do? The continent is spoken for by super interests and countries. What kind of empowerment can you provide if everyone Black decides to go back home? That's not a realistic thing to happen with its current state. So the history, the true history of the melanated world, of the Scottish, of the Americans, of the true Americans, of the even Asians. Asians were Black people just 200 years ago. That is something that we need to correct, and hopefully to God we do it sooner. So with that, I yield. Thank you for listening and allowing me to share.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. I'll make a couple of quick comments. There's a lot of like societal things that we can't really cover necessarily in the context of our meetups, but I will just comment briefly that I think one of the biggest challenges that we face, and I'm talking about global Africa here, which is really anybody who's Afro-descended, and I agree that if you do look at the history of the world was effectively Black only a few hundred years ago, actually. But I'm not going to go deeply into that. But what has happened is that due to colonization and this concept of race being created, we have so many of our people like, oh no, I'm from this country, I'm from that country, I'm from this country, I'm from this part, I'm this tribe. But what we're not really getting is that the other parts of the world view us as one thing. So whether we decide to cooperate or not, we're still going to be viewed as one thing, right? So we're better off to cooperate and understand the new game that we're in. because it doesn't matter if somebody says, "Oh no, I'm a Native American," no, I'm from the Oceania, no, I'm Hawaiian, no, I'm this one, I'm that one, no, I'm from this country in Africa, I'm from that country. Other people don't care, right? The only thing that they see is that you are Black.
Black.
And so if we do not cooperate, we cannot win. It's really that simple. Right?
Yeah, I just wanted to add into, thank you, Dr. Well, the real big thing I think I'm looking at is kind of, looking at ways to invest in Africa. I mean, we might not all can physically be there, but we can invest. There's nothing stopping us from helping and empower the continent to thrive. Because for me, I'm gonna be honest, I like to travel every continent I can travel to. So I feel like being a digital citizen, at some point, I think we're all going to go to space, and cryptocurrency may even be up there. And you heard it first from me, because if you think of Elon's building satellites and they're talking about all the space travel, they're going to have a colony somewhere, and they're going to have some kind of monetary system, and it's probably going to end up being some kind of digital asset. That's just me being honest. And I think that it's about being unified, and maybe not all of us moving to Africa, because like you said, that's a lot of work. And plus, people are rooted here. There's customs and traditions and things that African and African Americans have that are different, but they're similar, right? I come from Louisiana, and a lot of Creole and a lot of African tradition is still vibrant today. But you're right. Who's going to just pick up and just say, "Oh, we're going to move to Africa"? That's a whole different discussion. But I think you got a good point. But I do want to say, investing doesn't cost you anything, but your thought of, hey, I want to bring about social justice in this, and this is the way I feel like for Africa, because we know, like you said, we are all one, but at the end of the day, we're being excluded. And when I walk into a bank and I say I want to get a loan, an X amount of money, now I can go to a cryptocurrency exchange, a blockchain exchange, and say, hey, I want to get a loan. They're going to say, okay, what's your equity like? I'll say, oh, well, I got this, this cryptocurrency that I'm stocking up on, basically, and I can leverage that. There's companies out there that'll actually loan you money against your cryptocurrency. Now, I'm saying again, this is not financial advice, and there's not one shoe that fits all, but there are use cases where they'll say, you know what, I'll look at you differently. They're not looking at me for race; they're looking at me for my business idea, and I think that's the mindset we got to come with, because intelligence trumps everything. I can go into places I've never been able to be invited to because of my intelligence and level of my, things that I can discuss, and things that I understand about how technology works. And that's a big differentiator, because I think with Web3 technology, I would say, when I say Web3, we're talking about the next level of the internet, and that's where blockchain will come into play. And I think that's what really we need to really focus on, because the stuff that's happening in this physical world is just going to continue to happen. Racism, socioeconomic disparity, corruption, that stuff. But in the blockchain, I can change that. That's technology, that's software. It's just like, when you think about it, Microsoft, you think about all these various companies, they are changing the world. They have money to funnel into different projects and nonprofits and whatever. But if we're still on the sideline looking at them and saying, hey, I can't get in there now, it's all open source. There's nothing stopping you. Educate yourself, get the tools you need, and build it. It's not easy. I didn't say it was going to happen tomorrow, but there's a lot of this happening, and you just kind of got to tap in. And if, as you start looking around, you're going to be, oh, really? That's happening. That's happening. And I didn't even know about that. That's kind of like what this kind of community that we're all a part of is here to share knowledge and information. Because like, I don't come here knowing everything. You're teaching me as well. And I think the part of the Telegram group is for us to share, and we'll be able to, like, expand our knowledge. That's really the key. As long as you're looking for something, it's kind of looking for you. You just got to kind of keep looking around and being curious. And that's how I found everything. Most of it was not readily available on the internet. It was all word of mouth. But then, as the internet's been, obviously our biggest component, where people watch that, are on the internet more than they are watching TV. It's our all knowing, seeing eye kind of thing right now. So I would just say that was a good comment. But I think that Africa, we don't really understand the potential that we have. until we all sit down and say, okay, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to do? Let's all talk about that, and then think about the Web3 and the blockchain. And then, like I just showed you about the grant that was for helium, stuff like that. That's just the tip of the iceberg. I haven't even gotten into the blockchains. They're all giving grants out to develop on their blockchain. And even with Ethereum, it's like there's a lot of potential out there. I think the future's uncharted. And I just tell everybody, dive in and try to figure out where you can make your impact.
Absolutely. So we are coming to the top of the hour. I don't know if there's any final questions or comments. We'll try to close the top of the hour, hitting 3, which has been a great discussion. So that's why we're keeping it going. But and you've really given us a lot of food for thought, Kevin. So this has been really good. And everybody commenting. Thank you, Dr. Wilton, Dr. Everybody for joining in, commenting. Any final comments before we close out for today?
Just want to say thanks for me being a presenter and being here in this community is an honor. I feel like I'm glad to attend. I definitely look forward to future discussions, and please feel free to reach out to me. I would be more than happy to have one-on-one discussions with folks.
Do you want to share your contact here or in the
Telegram? Yeah, I'll probably everybody on the Telegram. I'll throw it on there.
Okay.
The Telegram.
Hold on, let me see.
The Telegram.
Go ahead. Okay.
Okay. I could put my email, but I don't really. I'm usually on that Telegram or something, but it doesn't matter. Just send me a message, and then, the WhatsApp. Okay, perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate
Any
everybody.
other comments anybody has? Thoughts as we close out? Questions, Kevin? It's been a great session, so really, I enjoyed it. So,
Yeah.
John, I have for you.
Go ahead, Erica.
Have you set up any? Have there been any spin-offs from this group, like people getting together to invest, or people getting together to travel and maybe explore business opportunities? Because I see this platform more like, hey, this is what's going on in the world, but I kind of envisioning breakout groups. Have you been? What's happening with that? Can we channel people?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of opportunity for that. That's the goal, actually, is to connect. So these kind of meetups, like Kevin is talking about, right? When you have them in the Valley, or you have these in Singapore, or you meet people online in person, is for you guys to go away and go, hey, and I can't count them all because everybody doesn't tell me everything they're doing. I've done many myself, but there are a lot of collaborations that come out of these where people go and work on things together. Some I'm sure they share, some they keep private, right? But that is the whole idea. Is, I mean, a lot of these concepts, I think even Bitcoin came out of like, at the end of some meetup or something. I don't want to lie, but there's different things where, you just get a few people to come together and their ideas start to, they start to generate people doing that. So if you have ideas, Erica, for, ways that you think we could collaborate, things we could do coming out of these, we are looking at doing like some, Africa kind of Bitcoin, blockchain, and real estate type things right now we're doing. If you have ideas for, how we can collaborate outside and bring these into different, different projects we can work on together, I'm happy to hear it. You can reach me on the Telegram. I'll also have my email in there as well. And, but that is our goal, Erica, is to have everybody come together and try different things. It's not just for us to meet and talk and then go away and then talk for another month. So,
yeah. The Telegram, can you put that information in the link, or what is
let me put that in there again. Hold on, give me a moment. Chain. Let me get the Telegram. Make sure you join the Telegram and the Meetup group if you're not in the Meetup group. The meetup.com, that is where we have the events live, and we also have a Patreon now that we're doing as well. So we have several, and we're trying to build that. The Patreon is where we're doing to help finance and support the meetups, because we really want to start doing a lot more on the ground, kind of in a nonprofit capacity, across the African continent diaspora, to support community groups. And because there's a lot of groups they've got a lot of enthusiasm, but they don't have a lot of finances. So,
all right. Thank you.
Yep. Cool. Anything else? Got a couple minutes till the top of the hour.
I think Yeah, this has been very insightful. I appreciate all the conversation, comments. I think that's important to have feedback and deconstruct some of this stuff, because I think one thing I want to make it clear, when I first became part of this kind of like on this journey, there was not a lot of information about even the blockchain and understanding cryptocurrency. All I knew about was Bitcoin, and you could buy it, and you couldn't even buy it on an exchange. People had it on pieces of paper. And they would give you a piece of paper. You'd have to there was these bulletin boards. That's what people don't realize. There was bulletin boards you go to and say, hey, I want to get a Bitcoin. They give you 10 Bitcoin, but they would hand you a piece of paper, and you'd have to have that, basically like the seed phrase, to get your coins, but you wouldn't know if it was legit or not until you get home, and then you're like, oh, okay. So the difference is now there's mass adoption. There's a lot more education. It's just up to us to drive it. And I think this is a great community. I think what you're saying is this may spark off a lot of this, where we do set up these types of, joint travel ventures where you're going over to these conferences together. We're all not expecting to be, because I'm a digital citizen again. I say that, where I think traveling together though is really important. Having everybody go, and we're all going to meet at this conference. So I put that African Bitcoin conference that's coming up in December. So something like that. There's a ton of these types of conferences, folks. There's a ton of so if you really want to meet some folks that are probably passionate about the discussion, this is probably where you need to focus. And at least it'll start you on that journey, and then you can build some good, solid relationships with some.
Good. All right. So I think we're there with top of the hour. It's been a really good one, everyone. Thanks everyone for joining. Please join us on Telegram. Please join us on the meetup.com. If you aren't already in there, join us on Patreon and support it. Even if you join it for free, that's going to build the momentum, because we want to build that community as well. And then keep the conversations going. We really want everybody to keep, as you said, you want to travel together, you want to do a community. If you want to do a project, please, do it. That's why we're here, is to connect everybody. So great. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us and taking all the time out of your Saturday, and those who it is, Sabbath. Everybody have a great rest of the weekend, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone. Thanks.
Bye now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.